February 6th, 2018. We're here for a regular business meeting of the Laramie City Council. The first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you please rise and join me? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Clerk, can you do roll call, please?
Gabriel.
Here.
Hanson.
Here.
McKinney.
Here.
Palikas absent. Shumway.
Here.
Schuster.
Here.
Stoner.
Here.
Pierce.
Here.
Somerville.
Here.
That's 8 present and 1 absent, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Next item, we don't have any proclamations or presentations tonight, so we're going to go straight to our public hearing. City Clerk, can you read the notice, please?
Notice is hereby given. The Laramie City Council will hold the following public hearing at 6:30 p.m. on February 6, 2018 in the City Council Chambers, Laramie City Hall, 406 Ivinson Avenue, Laramie, Wyoming, to take public comments on the following. Original ordinance number 1978, TA-17-03, submitted by the City of Laramie proposing amendment to various sections of Title 15 of Laramie Municipal Code for the purposes of amending franchise utility installation standards, public improvement requirements, preliminary plat expiration, landscaping requirements, lot consolidation criteria, alley development requirements, central gathering area requirements, and fence standards, and correcting typographical errors and incorrect cross-references. All applications, plans, specifications relative to these matters are available for review at the City of Laramie Planning Office at 405 Grand Avenue, Laramie, Wyoming. Anyone wishing to be heard should be present or may be represented by his or her agent at the meeting.
Thank you very much. So this is an opportunity for the public. Is there anybody who wishes to comment on this item specifically? So this is just for the cleanup amendment. Mr. Glass, please come forward.
Honorable Mayor, members of council, I am the owner and founder, as you know, of Lariat, Laramie's only local internet service provider, and I happened to look at the amendments to this, to the proposed amendments to the city ordinances, and I had a couple of comments, in particular on Section 29 of the ordinance, which modifies Laramie Municipal Code 15.16.040J. A couple of cleanups to the language there. It uses the term IT, which I assume means information technology, but doesn't actually define what that is, and it doesn't provide a clear definition anywhere. They really should define clearly what that means, to, you know, what it includes and what it doesn't. Does it include cable TV? Does it include telephone service? It doesn't say, and then they really should clear that up, especially since telephone service isn't normally considered to be information technology. Secondly, the ordinance implies that all of those services are subject to municipal franchises, and in fact, some of them are and some of them aren't. Cable TV, by federal law, is subject to municipal franchises. The federal government has to allow cities to require franchises, and cable TV is subject to that. Old-fashioned telephone service is subject to that. Internet service, which is not cable service, is not subject to franchise agreements, and it should be clear in the ordinance that that is the case, because requiring a franchise agreement could impede the installation of broadband service and actually could hurt the residents, because someone would have to jump through a great deal of hoops in order to provide competitive broadband service that might benefit the community. So that's another modification that should be made before something like this is passed. Finally, and the thing of the greatest concern has to do with the requirement that cables be undergrounded, and it sort of verbs that noun there, or that verbs the adjective there. It doesn't make provisions, though, for the future. In particular, it doesn't have what's called a dig once requirement in it, and this is very important because municipalities all over the country are doing this. When you are developing an area and you haven't yet put in the curb and gutter, maybe you haven't put in the pavement yet, you haven't done the landscaping yet, it's very easy for the incumbent provider, say the big cable company, to come in and put the cables underground and make no provisions for any future competitor to come in and do that. So that if a company like mine later wanted to come in with fiber, We would have to dig up the streets. We would have to replace the curb and gutter perhaps. It would be a whole lot more work to do this. So what is being done now is municipalities are not just requiring that utilities be placed underground, but there be conduit there which is available for the future installation of other services which haven't been thought of yet. If a new provider wants to come into town and you have conduit in place that is usable by new providers, all they have to do is pull the cables through the existing conduit. You don't have to dig up, you don't have to break the asphalt, you don't have to dig up the streets. You merely use the pull, usually use the pull tapes which are installed there. This is being done on the state level along highways. There is now a state requirement that if you want to dig along a state highway, you have to install conduit, which is, again, you install it once and you only dig once. And then in the future, if someone wants to add something to that conduit, they're able to do it. It's very important that the city not favor only the incumbent providers going forward. And so I'd like to ask that you amend this requirement to specifically state that this be that sort of dig once conduit, that it have handholds where people can come in later and pull cables, because that way we can have competition, and not just from my company. There are at least half a dozen others who might want to. This is just in general for the good of the community, to bring new development in Laramie into the 21st century, and to make sure that we have the opportunity to take advantage of those things in the future. So it's future proofing. Anyway, I'd like to ask you to consider all of these things before you pass the final ordinance.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Questions?
We can't really take questions at a public hearing, but I'm sure there will be some follow-up with you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Glass. Is there anyone else who would like to speak specific to this planning cleanup amendment for any of the items that's in there? Going once, twice? Please come forward.
My name is I've Laramie, about 60 years. And I don't know if this is the right time to speak of this, but you've got curb and gutter and all this mixed in. If you put those curves in 3rd Street like you're planning, it's going to be very expensive for whoever does it, because the wiring is not adaptable to that. I know when they put the street lights in years ago, they didn't have the safety feature of the what am I trying to say? Of having it grounded, and they had to go in and ground them. But it's going to be a very expensive matter, and frankly, I don't know if this is the right time, but it probably is once you're redoing things. Because I just would tell you incidentally, and I won't have much more to say. I had the Calverman for 30-some years. Over the years, I saw almost every large or small developer that ever came to town would be with a realtor finding them a place and doing things. And I've had some of them get so mad because of regulations that they come down there for their last meal and swear they won't even drive on I-80. And I'm not being facetious. I just think you should be very careful, and especially changing your downtown streets, because they had limestone replacement for a good base way back. And I would just point out that the crown on the road up by my house broke one of the construction companies. He got kicked off, and they put limestone in there. And when I moved a house there, it had to be 24 inches higher coming out of the house than the crown of the road. And now the crown of the road, I'd say, is a good 30 inches higher than my entrance. I just point some of these things out before you jump in and change a lot of things. These are real problems, and since I'm in construction, maybe I recognize them more than most people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to make public comment on this cleanup ordinance? So we're doing the public hearing on all the cleanup items, right?
Cleanup items for
Alright.
the utilities and.
All that stuff,
all
yep,
that stuff.
you're in the right spot.
Sure, I thought I was watching TV and
Okay.
buzzed over here right as Mr. Glass spoke, so. My name is Dave Coffey, Honorable Mayor, Council. I'm the owner of Coffey Engineering and Surveying, and I thought I needed to come kind of express my opinion on a couple of items. One related to the overhead power lines and the bearing of the overhead power lines, and the timing for preliminary plats. I work with many developers and myself have engaged in land development. I guess the first thing I'll talk about is the timing on preliminary plats. The 3-year time period that we have normally been given over the last several years to have as a time limit on preliminary plats has been fairly adequate. I think it would be detrimental to developers to see that back away from a 3-year time period. I think it would be actually preferable to see it move to 4. There's a lot of effort and a lot of cost that goes into developing those preliminary plats. And to see it come back 1 year almost doesn't give that developer enough time to prepare for the next phase of his development. 3 years I think is reasonable, 4 years would be better. Having it come back and have that cost again, if the development doesn't move forward within that time period would be a difficult thing for developers to swallow. Regarding the overhead power lines, it's very costly. I like the language that staff has crafted with the help from Rocky Mountain Power. I'd like to see something like that get implemented if possible. I am working with the LCBA and the City of Laramie to get Sear Sky done. That's obviously, there's significant costs. And this won't be the last time that significant costs are going to be incurred by developers. I'm working on another project that a developer's looking at right now on the fringes of Laramie. It could be tabled for a significant period of time if the power lines on that, particularly the WAPA power lines and the larger voltage 3-phase power lines, are to be buried. If there's some way that language can be crafted such that it helps keep some of those power lines from being buried, some of those power lines, local power lines, I recognize the need and the desire for the City of Laramie to clean up overhead power lines where possible. But if a subdivision can be designed around some of these and defray the cost and not burden development and developers, I see no reason for the city to regulate that. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Anyone else for this public hearing on the planning cleanup amendment? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close that public hearing. Move on to announcements. City Manager, do we have any announcements?
Mayor and Council, one announcement from Parks and Recreation.
Thank you. Dr. Feaser.
Honorable Mayor, City Council, this announcement comes on the start of our celebrating 2018 as the 150th year of Laramie, the sesquicentennial, if I can get that out correctly. The Parks and Recreation Department is going to be coming out with a program called Run the Rails, where we're encouraging participants to amass points to cross the Transcontinental Railroad 3,080 miles, and along the way you'll win awards. When you hit the Laramie site, you'll earn a 150th anniversary pin, and if you finish all 3,080 points, you will get a t-shirt. So watch your mail, watch your information. You'll be able to collect, for every time you come to the rec center, you'll collect 10 points. Every mile you swim, Klaus, you'll be able to get a little bit closer to your goal of 3,080 miles. But we're really excited to be part of the celebration for Laramie's 150th and watch for this program to be advertised and going here in the near future.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Any other announcements from staff? Okay. I have a couple of quick things here. So first, I want to welcome Commissioner Chestnut. Thank you for coming and hanging out. The Second thing is, I know we have a lot of people here and very interesting items. So for public comment, the general rule is we have a 5-minute time limit for any public comments for any items. I'll try to remind everybody through the night, but we want to give everybody equal opportunity to speak on the items. And then the last thing is a fun thing. So for every business meeting, we have been reading some of the very old ordinances that have crafted and been around Laramie. Some of them might still be on the books. So we're sharing some of those, and tonight, I don't know if it's appropriate or not, but we're going to go for it. There is an ordinance on infectious diseases. Thank you, City Clerk. So let's see, I'll just read a piece of this. It says that all practicing physicians within the city shall, as soon as the fact shall come to the knowledge of the physician, that any patient under his or her care is afflicted with diphtheria, smallpox, measles, scarlet fever, or other contagious disease, make a report in writing of that fact, giving the name of the patient and the residence, and a description of the room or house occupied by the patient. Such report shall be made directly to the mayor or president of the council under a penalty of $10 for each and every offense when they don't report. So the second section says, the mayor shall order the city marshal to place yellow flags conspicuously on all the houses and places where persons infected with smallpox may be during that period of infection. Any person removing any such flags that are placed without permission from the city marshal shall be fined in a sum of not less than $5 nor more than $25. And it goes on and on. I won't read the whole thing, but it's certainly, and it was approved for passage July 16th, 1884. And it just goes to show you what a different time period we live in and how far we have come in so many things. There are no yellow flags on any houses.
They have some cowboy steamboat on it, but that's up and down the streets. No fine for that.
No fine for that. That's a different use for a flag. So, all right. So we'll go on with our council meeting.
Your Honor, it should be
Yes.
observed that smallpox has been eradicated except in 2 countries in the world.
That is very true. Very true. All right. So we'll go on. Are there any disclosures by city council members on any items this evening? Okay. All right, Vice Mayor, changes to the agenda.
Right. So I move that the following changes to the agenda be approved. We have 4 changes tonight. Our first one is on the consent agenda. It's item number 8L. We are going to add that we are going to amend the budget to this particular resolution. Our next change is moving from the consent agenda, item 8G to 11A. Our third change is moving consent agenda item number 8L to 11B. And our last change is when we adjourn, we are actually going into executive session to discuss litigation and confidential information.
Second.
Second by Councilor Shumway. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. Vice Mayor,
I move that the agenda be set as changed.
do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Gabriel. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Vice Mayor,
Okay, I move that the consent agenda be approved and that each specific action on the consent agenda be approved as indicated.
do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Stoner. City Clerk, can you do roll call, please?
Gabriel.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
McKinney.
Yes.
Palikas absent. Shumway.
Yes.
Schuster.
Yes.
Stoner.
Yes.
Pierce.
Yes.
Somerville.
Yes.
That's 8 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 absent, Your Honor.
Thank you, that motion carries. Moving on to the regular agenda. Yes.
Just one question. I hope this is correct. Under schedule of meetings, 8M, there's a work session on March 7th. Everybody is aware that's a Wednesday, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
I
that is correct. Okay,
I believe
thank
it is a
you.
Wednesday.
I just wanted to be sure that that wasn't a mistake.
That's our joint meeting with the county commissioners for
Yeah.
community funding presentations. Okay, item number 10, Councilor Hanson.
All right, we'll move on to item number 10. I should introduce this by saying we're talking about a rural enterprise program, and that's a competitive grant administered by the United States Department of Agriculture designed to support targeted technical assistance, training, and other activities leading to the development or expansion of small businesses. Okay, I'd like to move that Council approve Resolution 2018-16, jointly authorizing the submittal of a rural business enterprise grant to the United States Department of Agriculture and authorize staff to negotiate a loan agreement with Star Awards and Promos and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign.
Second.
Second by the Vice Mayor. City Manager.
Good evening, council. I am going to initiate the staff presentation with respect to this item. I would note that Sarah Reese, our Economic and Community Initiatives Administrator, will also be providing some information. And of course, we're all eager to hear from our local business for whom this item would be of benefit. So as you look at your cover sheet, I am going to gloss over the first two sections titled Company Need. We'll leave that to the company who are best able to describe this project. And the grant overview section, as it pertains specifically to the USDA RBE grant, I will leave to Sarah Reese. What I wanted to provide to you this evening was a little bit of background just to set the context for this conversation. Those of you that have been on council for a number of terms will recall that we were very actively utilizing our revolving loan fund in the Economic Development Fund for a number of years, but frankly haven't entertained a request from many of our local businesses probably for 2 or 3 years to utilize the revolving loan fund. The revolving loan fund was established by City Council Resolution 2014-38 in the year 2014. That resolution establishes the rules for grants and low-interest loans from the revolving loan fund. The reason that the council had to adopt that resolution in 2014 was really to memorialize the use of recapture funds, which come from projects in our community that were originally seeded through Wyoming Business Council grants. We had to memorialize the terms of the low-interest loan and grant program in order to satisfy the requirements of our recapture agreements with the Wyoming Business Council. Just as a reminder, we have in the past executed a number of low-interest loans. By your own resolution 2014, the loans cannot exceed $100,000 without a special allowance of council. Also, the loans are purposefully designed to be low interest, meaning below going market rates that would typically be experienced for low businesses. This is part of the city's overall economic development program, which has been a priority of this council and preceding councils for decades in Laramie. Those economic development efforts and your revolving loan fund and grant program allow for seeding of funds that contribute to the retention, the expansion, and the relocation of businesses in your community. So these loans and grants can benefit existing as well as new businesses in our community and help them to grow. Previously, we've made loans with respect to the Alsop building. The city was a partner in creating that space. The Snowy Range Ski Area had a loan in the mid-2000s. We made a $100,000 loan to the city's rail spur operated by the LEDC LLC. And I think most recently, many of you will recall a $100,000 request from the Laramie Regional Airport Board, which actually the council determined to allocate as a $100,000 grant rather than a low-interest loan. According to Resolution 2014-38, eligible uses of revolving loan fund grants and loan monies includes working capital and equipment that help businesses to expand their offerings or keep business local. There are other allowable eligible uses, but I mention that one because it is, of course, the focus of this evening's discussion. So I'm going to invite Sarah up to talk a little bit about the USDA RBE grant program. I would note that the proposal before you tonight would allow us to access new and non-city economic development monies through the USDA program. And if awarded, it would allow us to really stretch our dollars that we would contribute as a municipality further, potentially doubling them. The contemplation here is that once the grant is approved, staff will negotiate a low-interest loan as described in the resolution, probably at not to exceed $25,000 for a 5-year term at a maximum of 4% interest. That's in keeping with what we've done historically with prior applicants. At the end, we'll finally negotiate the ceiling amount of that loan once we understand what amount USDA will award. With that, I'm going to ask Sarah to come up, and she will invite the Star Award and Promos folks as well, and then we'll be open for questions. Any questions for me?
Any questions? I think we probably should hear from everybody before we open up for questions.
Thank you.
Ms. Reese.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, Council. I want to kick the discussion of the grant off with a quick clarification. This grant had been circulating in our community several years ago, and when it had been circulating in our community, it was called the Rural Business Enterprise Grant. I just learned this afternoon from our USDA contact that it is now titled the Rural Business Development Grant. So it's no longer enterprise, it's now development. Now that we're all clear on that, let me tell you about this grant. It exists at the federal level through the USDA. It's a competitive grant program designed to support targeted technical assistance, training, and other activities. Those other activities do include the purchase of equipment. And the target recipients of, or I should say beneficiary of the grant fund, are companies that employ fewer than 50 employees and that have less than 1 million in gross revenues. Star Awards and signs will come up in Star Awards and promos will come up in a few minutes to talk to you about why the process they've gone through to determine that this is the best vehicle for their business growth, and then to discuss other businesses that will benefit from them acquiring this equipment. But what I would like to communicate to you is that this USDA grant program is structurally similar to the Business Ready Community Program, whereby we have supported Tri-Hydro, Basic Beginnings, Bright Agritech, and so on. These were companies that were faced with a conundrum. They needed to invest in people or buildings, but they couldn't invest in both. In this situation, we have a company that wants to invest in equipment and employees, but it cannot invest in both. We would maybe go to the Wyoming Business Council to help support this project as we have in the past, but there are a number of problems in doing that right now. First and foremost, the Wyoming Business Council has taken a significant hit to its BRC program, which of course you know has been used a lot in our community. That program used to award $13 million per quarter. They are now awarding $4 million per quarter. But beyond the Business Ready Community Program being sort of difficult to use in this time, that program isn't set up to fund equipment. So even if we could go to the Business Ready Community Program to help out this company grow, or to help this company grow, it wouldn't quite fit with that funding tool. So this affords us an opportunity to look beyond that tool and then introduce other, I'll just be punny, tools to our box to help propel economic development. So we have met several times with USDA staff. This is a competitive program. This project is a great fit for that program. This program, though, does rely on a scoring system, and the more that you can match, the higher that you will score. So the USDA strongly recommended a match for this grant, which helped us to think, well, maybe this is a way to revive our revolving loan fund. So the resolution, as Janine mentioned in the kickoff to this discussion, is asking you to jointly authorize an application, but then to also negotiate a agreement with Star Awards and promos based on the size of the agreement or grant award they receive. With that, I'll of course stay on hand for questions, but I'm going to hand the podium over to Chantel with Star Awards. She's going to talk to you about what this equipment is. I think she's even brought a little bit of a show and tell bag with her. She'll also talk about the other businesses that will be supported through this purchase of equipment, financing that they have pursued to support this project, and then how they came to the conclusion that this would be a good fit for them. I also want to note that the estimates that I noted within the agenda cover with respect to return on the investment are incredibly low. I suggested that they are outsourcing about 1,500 in these services and turning away the equivalent in business. That's based on a current business model. That's not based on projections. So Chantel will clarify what they do hope to gain from this.
Before she steps aside, procedurally, do we have to change anything in the description here, because it says rural business enterprise grant? That's still correct.
This is a rural what I have in your title is the previous name of the grant. So I'm
Yeah, so
looking at that
what should we
clerk.
change it to?
Rural business development.
Uh-huh.
Yes, I'm thinking.
Your Honor, I'd suggest that we make that change to be
Before we
accurate.
forget.
Rural Business Development Grant.
Yes.
Okay.
So let's put it on the to-do list. Let's let them get through their presentations,
Okay.
because we'll have to amend the title of the resolution as well
Yeah.
Okay.
as the cover sheet, so we can do that all together. Thank you. Welcome. If you could please introduce both of yourselves for the record, that would be great.
Chantel Anderson, and I am co-owner of Star Awards and Promos.
I'm Gustav Anderson, co-owner.
Honorable Mayor and Council, I do have some handouts for you. So in this is a letter that we sent to the city for the funds, as well as 2 letters from companies that would benefit, which is going to be part of the grant application if we pursue that type of a thing. And then I will also, when she's done passing those out, I do have some samples of some of the things that the laser does, just for hopefulness. Great. So in looking at this, we are currently looking at purchasing a laser engraver. This machine will allow us not only to more efficiently do things in our own business, but to expand into other product markets, retail segments for our business, as well as being able to partner with other businesses within the community that are currently sending things out of state at sometimes high costs and high turnaround, as well as having to pay shipping. So the laser, it engraves. It will do basically the similar things to sandblasting, so it can etch glass, it will etch on metal, it cuts and etches wood, leather, acrylics, all sorts of things. So for our business currently, it will allow us to more efficiently do some of the awards and things that we're doing now, as well as be able to do more customization of those options to better meet the needs of the community, so they're not having to go outside of the community for those things. As she did note, we do currently don't send out very much stuff to be lasered because it takes such a long time period and people just really aren't interested, so we don't send out a lot. But with the retail expansion, things like that, we could easily probably add $20,000 in revenue. And a lot of that would be retail, which would be a benefit to the city, because then that would bring in sales tax revenue for the city as well in those sales. For us, as far as jobs go, it would help us to hire at least one full-time person, as well as sustain a full-time job that we currently have, with the possibility of further additions if this really takes off as we're hoping it would. In the letters that you'll see, those businesses are also looking at a job increase of 1 to 2, if not more, for each of those 2 businesses. We do have 3 or 4 other businesses that are listed in that first letter that would be potential partners in this as well. And so the routes of funding, we first did start with the chamber. We went to the LCBA to look at their loan fund that they have. And in visiting with them and working with A&B Bank, that money basically kind of served as a buffer for us getting a loan as kind of a collateral on that loan. And for us, we were fortunate enough that that didn't really make a difference for us, fortunate and unfortunate. So that put our interest rate at just over 5% interest rate. And so where we're at in our business growing, continuing, that's still a little much for us to get a $50,000 loan at that interest rate where we're at in business. So then we also looked at other programs. The Women's Business Center has a loan, but their interest rates, I believe I had on the sheet, started at like 8%, which was even higher than the bank loan. So we looked at this grant situation and decided that was kind of a great program for us, and we liked the idea of the matching. We're big on the community and giving back, and not only does this help the city find other avenues for bringing money in, but also then would allow some funds through the repayment portion of that goes with the grant to go back into the revolving loan fund as well.
Okay, so do you want to tell us about what you have there?
Yes. Okay. So I'll just start these. So obviously it can engrave on wood, and it can engrave on metal, and we can pass these things around. And then these sheets just show some of the other fun, like random, random little things that you can do, that you can kind of just take a look at those to see. It's pretty incredible, all the different stuff. And if anybody's interested in more technical stuff, I do have some technical flyer information about the laser as well, if you want to geek out on specifics.
So with that, why don't we open it up to questions, and let's see if we have any questions for them first, then we go back to city staff.
Thank you,
Mr.
Anna. The next such machine is somewhere in Utah, I presume? Is that what I read?
So Honorable Mayor and Council, so yes, we currently send our services to a place in Salt Lake City. So we bought an existing business, we purchased the business, and that is the relationship that had been established, and that we found the best rates for what we're doing. And
Do you happen to know whether there is such a machine in Wyoming at all?
I'm sure, Honorable Mayor and Council, that there are machines in Wyoming elsewhere.
Okay. You're just using Utah because of price calculation and whatever?
Yeah, Honorable Mayor and Council, the price calculation and the previous relationship that had been established by the business.
And this is what the machine does, this kind of way. Okay.
Vice Mayor.
So do either of you or any of your staff members have experience using this laser printer, whatever you call it?
Madam Mayor and Council, so yes and no. Epilogue lasers, one of the benefits to them is that they function like a large printer. And so you can send a file just like you would send to an inkjet or a laser jet printer. Similar to our other pieces of equipment in the shop, the vinyl cutters, the other engravers. There's sort of a CNC interface where the software that comes with it allows you to take a picture or another vector image, send that over to the laser as if it were a printer, and then it does its work. And so with this laser, no, not directly, but with the technology, yes, this is what we do.
Interesting. Thank you.
And Honorable Mayor and Council, with that, the benefits of the laser, that we've done a lot of research on other lasers, and the benefits of this, they're located in Golden, Colorado, so we can drive down to pick up the laser so you don't have shipping. If something breaks or we need service, we can drive it down in a day and have it back. But we also do get full training with them with the purchase of laser. That's included in the purchase. So we get all of the training with them. They're hands-on at the factory whenever we need it, as well as webinars, seminars, and then training courses that we go to.
Thank you. Any other questions from the owners? All right, thank you very much. All right, questions for city staff on this?
Mayor, I have some questions for the city manager.
Please, Councilor Stoner.
Making voting
Yes, Mayor.
City manager.
Hi. I just have a couple questions concerning the City Economic Development Fund, because I'm relatively new here and this is the first item that I have seen. And I was just wondering if you could explain firstly, how much money is in that pot? And then secondly, if there are restrictions around what it can and can't be spent on? If we, in the future, needed to move it, if it's possible to move it, or if it just sits there designated and hasn't flexibility.
Mayor, Councilor Stoner, to your question about the Economic Development Fund, each year the council review that fund and approve that fund through budget adoption. The funds therein are absolutely restricted for the purposes I described at the beginning of the presentation. Those purposes, just to recap, are business recruitment, business retention, and business expansion generally. Per the resolution that was adopted by council, there are eligible uses of funds that are loaned out, and I talked a little bit about those. There are about 10 uses, as I recall. This equipment purchase is one of those eligible uses. And of course, capital construction would be one, rental of land, buildings, improvements, there's a host of uses. As to the amount, the last time we reconciled this fund, I recall there was slightly more than $200,000. And I'll remind you, the source of those funds is from lease payments on buildings that we lease to Tri-Hydro and Basic Beginnings, among others. And those buildings were built with grants from the Wyoming Business Council to help Tri-Hydro Beginnings expand their business. As they lease the buildings and pay rents to us, we segregate those funds into the Economic Development Fund. No tax dollars are taken and put into this fund. It's purely what we call recapture funds from previous economic development projects. And really, those funds are segregated and then paid forward to facilitate additional business recruitment, retention, and expansion. The goal, of course, and the reason that we have low-interest loans as our specified use is that we're not in this to make money the way that a business, or like a bank would be. You know, our goal isn't to create a profit margin. Our goal is to create jobs and to grow the local economy. So that's why our interest rates are typically low. Yeah, please.
In theory, so this is a loan, what happens if someone doesn't repay it? Just in theory.
Mayor, Councilor Stoner, we have individual agreements, and the agreement will dictate terms of non-repayment. And so I'm not dodging, just typically those are specific to each loan. They're typical for what you would see in other types of lending. There's some collateral pledge, things of that nature. And I hear Malia wanting to add some, so I'm going to let her do that if that's okay.
Director Brown.
Mayor, Councilor Stoner, basically this fund is a special revenue fund. The funds were related, came from originally a grant also, and they're restricted for economic development. I cannot move the funds. I can't, just to let you know, I can't do anything with that. The loans that we've done, we've had, like we did Snowy Ski Resort, we had collateral of land for that. This one, we will collateralize the actual equipment. So they don't, it's a lease purchase. So it's not a loan, I should say it's a lease purchase from us because, you know, we're going through USDA. USDA is we're the pass-through like we are with all our other economic development loans. We will have that collateral. If we did a lease, it would be pretty low. You know, it's not going to be a lot of years on the lease. And basically, you know, the fund, when we go in and this fund is only making 2.5, I mean, you don't make much interest off the fund. So anything over, in my mind, 2.5, we're doing better than investing, so.
Thank you. Thanks.
Other questions for city staff? Councilor Hanson.
I think we should probably mention that we've had very good luck with this fund, because I think we only had one loss of money, and everybody has paid back with interest on this fund. It's been very successful from that perspective, that it is not a matter where we have to send the police after people to bring back the money. It's been very, very successful in that respect.
Mayor Councilor Hanson, you are correct, and I will reiterate what I hear the finance director behind me saying. She says that we've never lost money. So.
Since I've been here.
Since she's been here. So thank you for putting that on the record. That makes the finance director and city manager happy. We've not lost money. I guess I'll just say in closing, if there are no other questions, the staff recommendation is certainly do pass on this. We think this is really exciting to see a local business coming and wanting to use our revolving loan fund. As we said, it's been fallow. We haven't had any requests for a few years, so it's just laid there doing nothing. And it's exciting to have an opportunity to put it into use in the community, and more importantly, to reestablish our relationship with USDA, which was pretty active probably 5 or 6 years ago, but also hasn't been really utilized. So we're excited for the opportunity. We think it's a good project with good merit. So,
Question, Counselor Schuster?
Yes, which laser etching unit are you getting?
okay, I'm totally out here.
I think it's is it the M2? 32?
I didn't see it anywhere.
Mayor and Council, the M232.
Okay. And I knew which one it was. I was reading about each one. Thank you. It's just a curiosity question.
And I guess that's why we are kind of hesitating on how much it will cost, because we don't quite know the price, right? Is that what I understand?
What's in here?
The entire purchase will be under 50.
It is in there?
Do you want to know the prices of the laser? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
1 second.
Because I thought it was a little unclear, as far as, how much grant we need, how much we would put in, et cetera, because it's a little unclear how expensive this thing is.
Sure, Mayor and Council, so we're applying to the grant with a 50-50 match, and so it'd be 25 and 25. We used the $50,000 ceiling because we knew that would be over. I believe the total cost of the laser, the accoutrements, is $46,000. And of course, we're looking at a $46,000 investment that'll have about 10 times that impact on the local economy.
So the 50 would cover it? Okay.
Correct.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Absolutely.
Pick up your stuff before we lose it up here.
These are not freebies today. I have to give
Yeah,
that to
no
a customer
freebies.
tomorrow.
Thank you. I don't play baseball anymore.
All right, so if there's no other questions, we'll go out to the public. Is there any public comment on this item? I see none. Okay. Back to council for discussion. Discussion on this item? So I guess I'll add just a couple of comments here. Although I'm supportive of this project because it's a relatively low dollar amount, it's been an interesting discussion and kind of contemplation on the current ability for a small business in Laramie to obtain capital and to make investments. And the default position for the city to be in as a small business lender is a little uncomfortable for me. I've always thought of that personally as a place for the banks to be, a place for LCBA to be. That's certainly what we pay them to do in their contract. And so I'm a little uncomfortable with what we're doing here, but I think it's also a really good time to have this conversation overall because the city is talking about, revitalizing and maybe changing how we do economic development. Certainly changing at a statewide level, the business council is changing, so maybe we can have this conversation and look at where we can put capital. But we certainly know that if we don't have the ability in the community for small business and entrepreneurs to go out and get capital, then we're not getting anywhere. So those are my brief thoughts. Any other comments on this? Councilor Hanson?
Well, one comment in regard to what you just mentioned is, I think the previous loans we have done have been of a similar nature. I think for buildings and expansions, et cetera. I don't think probably directly for equipment we have not, I think, done in the past. But my God, it's pretty well the same thing, the expansion of a small business. Furthermore, I think the way this seems to be structured, if we get the grant, we have spread the risk to half for us. And I think the money, I've been long enough on council, the money was there for that specific purpose, namely to expand small businesses in the local economy, especially also to create jobs. And as a matter of fact, I read the documentation here, there is one new full-time job associated with this, and it's a well-paying job. And so I think from that perspective, I think it's a very good investment. Thank you.
If there's no other comments, then could I have a member of council potentially put an amendment on the floor to amend the title to change it from Rural Business Enterprise Grant to Rural Business Development Grant, both on the cover sheet and the resolution?
So moved.
Motion by Councilor Stoner. Do we have a second? Second by Councilor Schuster. City Clerk, is that motion clear?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Is there any discussion on the amendment from council? Is there any comment from the public on the amendment? We're just changing the title to reflect the new USDA program. Okay. City Clerk, can you do roll call on the amendment to change the title?
Stoner.
Yes.
Schuster.
Yes.
Shumway.
Yes.
Polikis absent. McKinney.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Gabriel.
Yes.
Pierce.
Yes.
Somerville.
Yes.
That's 8 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 absent.
Thank you. That amendment carries. The title is now changed. Any further discussion on the item itself? City Clerk, can you do roll call on the item?
Hanson.
Yes.
Gabriel.
Yes.
McKinney.
Yes.
Polikis absent. Shumway.
Yes.
Schuster.
Yes.
Stoner.
Yes.
Pierce.
Yes.
Somerville.
Yes.
That's 8 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 absent, Your Honor.
Thank you. That motion carries. Congratulations and good luck with the grant application. All right, we'll move on to item number 11. Councilor Stoner.
I move that council accept the bias crime report for calendar year 2017 in accordance with Laramie Municipal Code 908020.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Second by the Vice Mayor. Chief Stalder.
Mayor and Council, in 2000, the City Council adopted an ordinance regarding bias crime. There's 2 primary points to the ordinance. The first was that new police officers and existing police officers at that time be trained in the investigation of bias crimes. That's done as a matter of course. The second aspect of the ordinance was that on a yearly basis, a report detailing any bias crimes of the previous year be submitted to council. That report is in front of you for calendar year 2017. You know that there were 2 reported bias crimes during 2017. I would only add that the methodology that we use to report bias crimes is established by the FBI's CJIS division, which is the Uniform Crime Reports. So those are reported to the state and then in turn reported to the federal government based on those guidelines. They're based on bias factors of the federal government. So any protected class, age, sex, sexual orientation, religion, those sorts of things are included in those bias crimes. That's an overview. I'd take any questions.
Questions for Chief Stalder on this? Okay, thank you. Any questions at all for any city staff on this? All right, we'll go to the public. Any comments from the public on this item? Please come forward.
Marion Griffin, Laramie, Wyoming, and I'm glad to get a chance to speak about this because our police department, I've been in bar business as many as 3 bars at a time for almost 50 years, and I think our police officers are special. They're wonderful, and I hope they continue getting the respect that I always give them in my bars, and I think they're to be commended with the harassment, insults, and everything that's going on in the country. And I think we've got an excellent one. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And also, if you offer public comment, can you please make sure you sign the sheet on the table behind the city clerk? Mr. West, welcome.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, and thank you, council members. My name is Robert West. I'm a resident here in Laramie, and I have lived here for about 10 years now. I'm from Cheyenne, Wyoming. I grew up there, went to school, graduated, and then chose to move here to attend the University of Wyoming. After I graduated, I stuck around for a few years hoping that I would leave, but the universe had a different plan for me, and I'm excited to say that Laramie is my home now. I consider Laramie my home. But I have concerns about Laramie. And predominantly this comes in the form of the protections and the safety and the support our marginalized communities face, our protected classes face. I'm a gay man myself. I've had the struggle of coming out, of understanding my own sexual orientation, of getting public backlash, both from family, from religious organizations, from friends, from community. But beyond the public backlash that I've gotten, I know that so many members of the LGBT community face even worse things than I do. For instance, we have 2 cases in front of us that have been reported and that have been documented. But in the past year, I know of multiple incidents that are not before you right now. One, a gay man was choked in a bar because he decided to talk about his sexual orientation, and somebody did not like that. 2, we have a blossoming drag performance group here in Laramie, and most of them go out to the bars after their performances and want to celebrate. Many times, they have been physically assaulted, verbally assaulted, and have had wigs pulled off, have their bodies touched, have been assaulted because of their gender expression and their gender presentation at the time. And finally, we have transgender people and gender nonconforming people who identify as feminine most of the time, who are constantly sexualized, who are constantly questioned about their gender, and when they do not like to answer those questions, are physically and verbally assaulted because they refuse to answer those questions. These are the things that my friends and people in our community are facing that you all don't know about. I love Laramie. It is my home, like I said, but I think there's extreme growth that we can do as a community. We have done some amazing things in Laramie to make sure our community is protected and it's safe and all of our community members are valued. But there's more we can do. There really is. We all know and we all love Laramie, and we all want every one of our community members to feel that love, to feel that support, to feel welcomed in our city. But the reality is that not all of us do. No matter race, no matter ethnicity, no matter sexual orientation, no matter religious affiliation, no matter gender expression and gender identity, everyone should be given the protection and the support to be a part of Laramie and to call Laramie home. We have an opportunity here. We can either sit and shove this under the rug and say that these incidents are isolated, that they're not part of a national trend, that GLAAD, which is an LGBT communications organization, has said that most Americans, or more and more Americans, are becoming less comfortable with having LGBTQ people in public spaces. And we can continue down that road where more and more of our youth, more and more of our LGBT community do not feel comfortable in Laramie, and ultimately leave Laramie to find better protections, better support, and better sense of community in other places. Or we can address this head on, acknowledge it for what it is, and take proactive action to change this course. Right now, I have 4 recommendations that I would like this council to consider in addressing this. And I will say that I am also a board member of Wyoming Equality, which is our statewide LGBT advocacy network, who is advocating for non-discrimination protections across our entire state. And so this comes from Wyoming Equality as well, of not just me as a Laramie resident. The first thing I recommend is that there is an immediate response from this council and the city as a whole that acknowledges that these two incidents have happened and that states that this is not part of our values as a community, making it public knowledge beyond this council room and beyond the agenda that these incidents have happened. Two, I believe there's opportunity here for this city council and our community to come together and create some positive change around education. We have our bias reports. That is an amazing first step. And we also have our NDO, our non-discrimination ordinance. I would assume, and I have the assumption, that not much education is done to the public about these two mechanisms to protect the most vulnerable of our communities. I recommend that this council partners with Wyoming Equality, partners with the University of Wyoming, partners with interested stakeholders across the state, including our local business owners and our downtown alliance, to create an educational campaign that does four things. One, a statement of values that that we are welcome to every person, no matter their identity and their background. Two, that these processes to report and to acknowledge acts of discrimination or bias crimes are in place, and that any resident can use them to report incidents. Three, that our NDO is in place, that we cannot be discriminated, that based upon sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression, we cannot be discriminated in housing, public accommodations, and employment. But then four, shifting to a positive light of understanding that our NDO and our bias reports can be used to strengthen our community bonds by encouraging people to stay in Wyoming, by staying in Laramie. That these processes and these structures are a resource because we care. We want people to stay here. And that can be used for businesses who want to come and do business in Laramie, but also students who come from the University of Wyoming that we know these values coincide with their beliefs and that they want to start businesses here. They want to be an entrepreneur in Laramie, but they don't see their values reflected in our community. The last two recommendations I have is that we explore digital and online reporting systems. Texting, emails, a simple online form, even an app where these things can be more accessible to people. We also know from the GLAD study that not only are all LGBT people more likely to engage in online kind of information and resources, but particularly our youth of the LGBT community are. We are a tech-driven generation, millennials and even the generation below us. We would rather interact, for better or worse, with technology than going into a physical building and trying to report. And I will also acknowledge that that can be a long process, to acknowledge that something violent has happened to you, that you've been attacked or assaulted or verbally accosted, and now you have to go talk to somebody about that. It's extremely violent. And a lot of people would rather simply move on with their lives than to report those incidents. The last thing I'll recommend is that you partner with the University of Wyoming, and particularly the police department, to understand what's going on campus. They have their Clery Act that they're required to report to the federal government that they have failed to report for the past 3 years. It's been a big conversation at the university. They've made some headway, but there's so much more that our police department on campus can do, so we can gain a larger picture and a larger understanding of what's going on, not just in Laramie, but on school property as well. Those are my recommendations. I think these are all positive things and positive steps we can take. And they're all things that we can do to build our community, and retain our youth, and build a society in Laramie that is welcoming to all people, and to tell all people that they're going to be protected, they're going to be celebrated, and they're going to be welcomed here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to offer comment? I'm going to go here, and then you'll be next. Thank you. Welcome. Oh, and Mr. West, can you sign the sheet behind the city clerk? Thanks.
Madam Mayor, Council, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak to you this evening. I'm Sarah Burlingame, and I'm the Executive Director of Wyoming Equality. And I just want to affirm everything that our board member, Robert West, said, we think those are 4 great recommendations. But I drove over the hill tonight to talk to you about an event that I was privileged to attend in Sheridan this last week. There was a hate crime in Sheridan, at Sheridan Community College, against 2 young Native women. And I thought that the president, President Young, had a really swift and exemplary response. And he said at the roundtable that we had on Friday evening that his first impulse was to do damage control and to sweep it under the rug and to try to treat this as an incident that we needed to cover up for the good of the reputation of the college. But he also said that wiser heads prevailed. I think his was one of those wiser heads to say that ultimately that didn't serve the students. And it was a really sincere acknowledgement that he'd had conversations with the students with a sincere belief that this was an anomaly, that this didn't represent life for them, and that we all have this general belief that in Wyoming, we actually have a really good ethic around fairness, around how we treat one another, around our values as a community. And so any aberration to that was just that. It was like far outside the norm. But he did something which I think is really valuable and important. He asked the students themselves, is this anomalous for you? And the students reported back, no. And he said, well, why haven't I heard about it? And they said, well, why would we? There isn't that trust there that needs to happen in order to report. So the following day, I got to sit on a panel just to talk specifically about hate crimes that was put together by the Department of Justice. So Rose Salamanca is our regional representative, and I know she would love to be a resource to you guys as you go forward, and she likely already is. But one of the things that our council talked about, or our panel talked about, was Gillette, I believe, is the only city that voluntarily reports their hate crime statistics to the FBI. My understanding is that within the next 3 years, the software that they're implementing for all of our law enforcement will automatically do that, but that's 3 years out, right? So a gentleman who was on the hate crimes panel with me had the statistics for Gillette's hate crimes for the year 2016. And it listed the 3 crimes that had been reported and what basis they had been reported under. Under the box, I don't know the name, so I'm going to say box, for hate crimes because of gender identity or sexual orientation, it accounted as 0. But we know that 2016 was the year that Trevor O'Brien took his life. We know it was the year that his car was vandalized. We know it was the year that he was assaulted multiple times. We saw the pictures that he put up on social media of his bruised and battered face. But if you look at that reporting, there's a 0, right? So there's 2 things that has to happen. One, like my colleague Robert says, is our culture has to change and we have to advertise and educate to our public. We are honestly and sincerely here for you. Come forward and you will be believed. Come forward and we will have a mechanism where you can say the things that are truly happening to you in our community. Because we don't believe they reflect our values. We don't believe that people should be assaulted and stay silent about it. We believe if that's happening at our bars, at our schools, in our town, anywhere, that we want accountability to it. So, talking about hate crimes in Wyoming was pretty bleak because it's on the rise, right? In the last 4 months, I have become aware of 5 hate crimes that I have had no knowledge of anything like this happening within the last 20 years that I've lived in Wyoming. So there was the waterboarding in Casper. There was the young man at the Mint Bar in Sheridan who was assaulted by a stranger for wearing a pink shirt and the perception that he was gay. There was the junior high student in Mills who came to school with knife marks on his face because his father had assaulted him for over an hour with a knife for the perception that he was gay. There's the young Native woman at Sheridan College, right? All of those have happened in the last 4 months. So as our panel came together to talk about what the heck is going on, like what is happening in Wyoming, all of those are new. That's not business as usual. That's not normal. The question was, what do we do about it? And the response from Rose Salamanca from the Department of Justice that gave me the most hope and the most optimism that we could do this was that the thing that combats hate crimes, like the one thing that actually makes a measurable difference and that you can see in the metrics as whether or not hate crimes proliferate or contract, is an immediate community response. If there is an immediate mobilized community response, then hate crimes diminish. Because the people who do them are looking to see, they're asking us. They are setting a test for us. They're saying, here's a boundary. Is it okay if I cross it? And if this is okay, I'm gonna do a little more, right? So it's incumbent on us to have these conversations in our schools, in our churches, in our businesses, but certainly to embrace things like the bias crime report, to put them out front and center, and to say we're not afraid of letting the public see and know and engage with these statistics. We're afraid of our town becoming a place where the people who do this feel emboldened. Because they will, right? They will. But we have the opportunity to tell them, not in our town, not in our state. So I hope that you embrace this. I hope that the 4 measures that my colleague laid out for you are adopted. And if there's any way we can be of service, we would be more than happy to help. Thank you.
Thank you for coming over the hill tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate it.
It didn't snow.
All right, there we go. Oh, yep, sign in, please. Is there anyone else who would like to offer public comment on this item tonight? Please come up forward.
Good evening. My name is Candace A. Allen. I'm a resident of Wyoming. I'm a mother of 3 beautiful children, and I do have something to say that has been bugging me, and God be with me because I'm not good at speeches. I am here and vouch for families in broken homes that people suffer with addiction. And I don't know if I could speak on this part, but I just want to say, instead of, breaking homes and locking people up and putting their time on still, people that are addicted to marijuana or they're suffering with that life path, that dark road, because it is a big, wicked road, to overcome, especially people that go through that struggle. I'm here to say, instead, I love Laramie and I love the community, and it's my home. It's my home. I call the church, my church is the mountains here. That's where I go and I think and I pray. I just want to say, instead of putting people's time on hold and breaking up a family, we should be rebuilding and amending families here and having more opportunities and more programs to unite those and amend those and vouch for the ones that are, that are in, my position, instead of just throwing them on the corner or pointing the finger and saying, you did bad. I think we should have more resources, and I think that would be great for us. I know that the mayor spoke on that behalf, and I just hope that, our community could shed some love and light on that and bring families together and bring husbands home and not split them apart. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Please don't forget to sign the sheet behind the clerk. Thank you very much. Mr. Hale? Welcome.
Good evening. I may not be very popular, but that's never stopped me. And I believe I've stated this years ago, but I'd like to give you an example. I knew of a cop, Laramie cop, and he's scheduled for duty. And he's riding his bicycle to the police station on his way to sign in for his assigned duty. And on the way, we had just gotten a pretty good rainstorm. He observed a car veering out of its way to hit a great big mud hole in order to splash the occupants that were walking on the sidewalk. And it took him a bit, but he caught up with that car. Fortunately, they had to stop at a stoplight. And he gave the driver of that car his business card that indicated he was a police officer. He was out of uniform, and he told him in 20 minutes he wants to see him at the police station, as he'll be in uniform and he'll have his little ticky book and everything else that's involved. Now, the point of all this is he was doing his job. He didn't stop and interview the people that got splashed. Is there anybody here that's got some sort of sexual orientation issues? Is there anybody here that's got any religious issues? He merely did his job. And so the point of all this is, and I know I'm notorious for being oversimplistic, but it would seem to me, if we have a police department that uniformly does their job, none of these things should be entertained. It doesn't matter who you are, what age you are, or any of the other conditions. If you're assaulted, it's assault. And that's how it ought to be addressed. And in fact, I think it can actually look the other way, that it's discriminatory against people who apparently don't fit in this category that we're addressing tonight. So my belief is, once again, I've seen it happen. If you have cops that do their job, these things are minimized. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to offer a comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close public comment. Discussion by council on this? I'll kick it off. Go for it. Councilor Stoner.
I just want to reiterate some of the comments that were given by the public, and I have shared also hearing stories of people who are in marginalized communities who have not felt like they have safe space here, and I think that's really what we're talking about. And I know that along with many of the other people, I like to think all of the people in Laramie want people to feel safe and accepted here. And I'm so incredibly happy to live in a community that's willing to pass an NDO and willing to be a leader on that. And I think it's important for us to continue to do that and to not just check the box and say, well, we reacted to that, so now we're good. Because these things do come up, and I think that they can't escalate quickly. So I don't know what particular action we have time to do tonight or are interested in doing, but it seems like the most immediate one would just be a statement from the city. And I think that in thinking about how to be proactive and eliminating the escalation of that would be important. But I'm interested in all of the things that were mentioned. I'm not sure procedurally how to.
Councilor Hanson?
Thank you, Honor. Just on a practical matter, it would be good if the gentleman who spoke would write or present his suggestions to the city clerk, just so we can at least look at them. I can't take it in that quickly, all of them in their complete form, and just so we will eventually be able to do something, to have your information would be very important. That would be my suggestion. Thank you.
Councilor Gabriel?
And thank you, Mayor. I would follow up on what Klaus has said. Robert, I appreciate your comments. Robert has been one of my basketball colleagues for a number of years, and I appreciate you coming forward. Also, the other comments that have been presented here tonight are very appreciative, certainly, and if we could have something more than, maybe something sent to the city manager that the city could consider, I think would be an appropriate possibility that we could look in the future to act upon. Or form some kind of committee that we could work with the university, other people in this community. It would be great.
Vice Mayor?
So I'm especially excited about the education component of what Robert mentioned. So, I think we should potentially, I know this is not the right time for a work session or committee forming and stuff like that, but to suggest a work session, but I think we need to move forward, and we can have that discussion at the end of the meeting on what and how and who and when and stuff like that.
So I will certainly add to that, given the comments we have from council members as well as what was given from the public. I certainly think it would be appropriate to have another discussion about this, about some of the recommendations and what we can do moving forward as a city and as a council on this. I'm very interested in all of them, actually. I think it's really easy to celebrate the NDO and then go, great, we did it, and then we haven't done anything next, right? What's next? So I think it's a really good time for a conversation, and so I think we can arrange that. We can certainly do it with a special meeting or something in a more timely fashion. We have a lot of stuff coming up, but if it's a priority of council, we can certainly do that. Councilor Hanson?
Thank you, Your Honor. In support of Laramie and of the City Council, we are, I think, the only community in the state that has passed an appropriate ordinance. So I would say it's kind of interesting. These matters have appeared in front of the legislature, and the legislature does not want to take them up. We have taken them up. So we have done some things, and I think we could probably build on that and probably also review our ordinance that we did pass. Thank you very much.
So would it be appropriate for council to maybe work with Wyoming Equality and other interested parties, maybe from the university, to coordinate a conversation on this? Does that seem like a good way forward for council on that?
Mayor, I just have one comment. Sure. It seems I'm great with that for the most part.
Okay.
It seems like the first suggestion was a little more time sensitive, since there's perhaps going to be an article coming out about the two bias crimes that were reported this year, and making sure we can capture a reaction to that. And I'm just wondering what the appropriate
timeline would be. And
is that come in the form of a resolution, or
it could I think that the typical process for that, so I think council would want to approve a resolution or a letter or a statement to go out to the public in whole, and the fastest we could do that as we're set up right now is to bring something next Tuesday at a special meeting to do. Yeah, we would have to add it to the work session that's already planned, which we can do.
Next?
Yeah, next Tuesday. So it would be in a week. I think that's probably, unless anybody has any other suggestions. Vice Mayor?
So, this year's the 20th anniversary of Matthew Shepard. So I think there have been meetings that I've been participating last night with Robert, and I think there's going to be a pretty big educational piece, hopefully, going forward with that. Sheriff O'Malley was there, a few other folks were there. So I think we have time on some and not so much time on others. Am I right? So let's just do more talking, and we can.
Your Honor, you have somebody in the public who wants to speak.
Oh, Mr. West?
Yeah, I just want to say that I'm happy to...
If you can come up to the microphone, sorry.
I apologize. Thank you, Honorable Mayor. Thank you, council members. I will just say that I'm happy to put together these recommendations in writing and get them to you fairly quickly. And I'm happy to put some language together around a potential letter or a statement that you all can use next Tuesday in regards to addressing this issue to the public.
That would be wonderful.
Great.
Is that all right, council?
if that would give us enough time to review something by next Tuesday, that would be my preference as
Okay.
one of 9, but.
Okay. Does anybody else have a different preference?
It's fine.
Okay, Mr. West, I will work with you to get some stuff prepared for next Tuesday.
Sounds great.
Thank you very much. Yep. Please come forward.
I didn't plan to speak anymore to this, but I will speak to it. I'm a very much live and let live person all my life. And you must realize, if you watch any of the news stations, I don't know which one, the police are so bound by rules and regulations. People don't understand that, for one thing, they act under direction, city police act under the direction of the city council and the city manager. University would probably work under the same thing, but their rules come from the president of the university, and I presume trustees. But I will say this, a lot of times people do not want to come forward. They have their reasons, and I think those reasons should be respected. And I know that law enforcement especially has their hands tied. Like at the hospital, you have to sign all these privacy things. It's a wonder they can put their name down. And I'd just like to point out, that let's don't blame the city police force or any recognized force for something that's beyond their control, and they're ordinary people doing an extraordinary job. And I just have to hold up for them on that basis with my experience with the public. You know, I've owned as many as 4 restaurants at one time, and you see all kinds of people. And like I said, I am live and let live. Always have been that way. I don't think there's one prejudice I could ever be accused of. And I just wanted to point it out again, that you can't believe the police have to be a miracle worker, because I would say probably 90% of the people, I don't know if I'm right, but I would guess that 90% of the people that stir up a problem, when they think about it, they don't want to come forward. They don't want to press charges because they're going to have to get up and speak, and they're going to have to tell the truth. And they might also look out for people that know that it isn't the truth. So let's consider all those things on our employees. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any discussion from council on this? If not, I'm going to go to a roll call vote based on our discussion. All right, City Clerk, roll call on the bias crime report acceptance, please.
Stoner.
Yes.
Schuster.
Yes.
Shumway.
Yes.
Polikis absent. McKinney.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Gabriel.
Yes.
Pierce.
Yes.
Somerville.
Yes.
That's 8 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 absent, Your Honor.
Thank you, that motion carries. Now, to everybody in the audience and council, it is now 8 o'clock and we have got a lot of stuff to get through. So right now, I'm going to call a 10-minute break, and I'd like to speak with some of the members of the audience that are here for certain items, because I think that council may need to make some changes or potentially agree to postpone some stuff so we can send some people home that we're not going to get to. Is that fair enough? All right, back in 10 minutes. Thank you. My apologies, that took just a few more than 10 minutes. So due to traveling guests and time constraints, we're going to do a quick reordering of the agenda. So I'm going to ask council to suspend the rules and then approve this reorder of the agenda real quick. And what I'm recommending is the following. The next item that council should consider is item number 16, which is the cleanup amendment for planning, having to also do with power lines. I'm going to ask council to put that on the floor for discussion. We're going to hear exclusively from our guests from Rocky Mountain Power, who drove from Casper to be here. We apologize, we were not aware of you guys before, but we want to make sure we get their comments, and I'm going to ask council to postpone that item till next Tuesday. The next item council will hear is items number 13 and 14. That is the annexation and rezoning for the property on Soldier Springs. And then we will go back up. We will do 11A, which is the magistrate for the municipal judge position. Then we will do 11B, which is the airport funding. Then we will go to item number 12, which is the Albany County Recreation Board. And then the only item left is item number 15, is the sidewalks ordinance, sidewalk shoveling ordinance. And I'm going to ask council to also postpone that till next Tuesday.
You mean 2 weeks? We don't need
Nope.
it Tuesday.
You want, the
Special
meeting,
meeting.
we could potentially do a special meeting, but the ordinance, the meeting on the 20th is already very full. So we only have one work session scheduled for next Tuesday. I think we can probably kick these 3 items out with a quick work session from the city clerk on boards and commissions. All right, Vice Mayor, motion to suspend the rules, please.
So I will move that we suspend the rules.
Do we have a second? Second. Second by Counselor Stoner. This requires a 2/3 majority and has to be a roll call vote. City clerk?
Hold on.
Oh, I forgot to tell the city clerk what we were doing. Whoops.
Okay. Gabriel.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
McKinney.
Yes.
Polikis absent. Shumway.
Yes.
Schuster.
Yes.
Stoner.
Yes.
Pierce.
Yes.
Somerville.
Yes.
That's 8 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 absent.
Thank you. That motion carries with more than a 2/3 majority. Vice Mayor, motion to reorder the agenda as follows.
So I move that we reorder the agenda, and I will try to say what the mayor just said. So we're moving item 16 to the next position. We're just going to put it on the floor for comments, and then we are hoping to postpone. Item 13 will be next, followed by 14, 11A, then 11B, 12, and item 15 will be postponed.
That is correct. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Stoner.
Does she need to say that 15's postponed to next Tuesday?
She didn't.
She just said
Well,
postponed.
she said postpone, but we have to do that in the motion.
We have to
Okay.
do it when it comes up, I think.
All right, do we have a second for that from Counselor Stoner, right? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the agenda is reordered. All right, so let's go to item number 16. Mr. Teeny, would you like to give any kind of brief introduction to our guests?
Don't you need to be introduced?
Oh, yes, I do. I'm sorry. Item number 16, Counselor Gabriel, will you put it on the floor, please?
Thank you, Mayor. This is an ordinance amending various sections of Title 15 of the Laramie Municipal Code for the purpose of amending franchise utility installation standards, public improvement requirements, preliminary plat, expiration, landscaping requirements, lot consideration criteria, alley development requirements, central gathering area requirements and fencing standards, and correcting typographical errors and incorrect cross-references.
Second.
He
Well, I think
didn't
that's
make
You
that
have to
motion.
read the motion.
You have to read the motion.
You have to
now.
move to approve.
Oh, yeah.
Move to approve.
I thought he moved it already.
This. Move to approve.
I would move to, let me see here,
Approve original ordinance, 1978.
based on findings of fact and conclusions of law, and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the ordinance.
He didn't say
Close
that.
enough.
Your Honor, he needs to
Clerk?
say the ordinance number in the motion.
Okay.
He didn't do that.
Let's see,
1978.
you snow and ash.
Not the matter.
We can just do a motion to approve original ordinance number 1978 on second reading.
That would be my motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Hanson. Thank you. All right. Mr. Teeny. No, you're fine.
Mayor and council, based on the discussion that council had earlier, I'm just going to keep this very short, allow you for public comment or questions. Just noting that we do have members from Rocky Mountain Power here, or representatives of Rocky Mountain Power here to answer any technical questions you may have on the power line component of the proposed ordinance. We know that there's a highly technical side to that, and so we have information included in your staff report that we've worked with Rocky Mountain Power on. However, I would let you know that they are here to answer questions. Leave it at that. Otherwise, we can discuss further items regarding this ordinance at a later meeting.
Mr. Teeny, do you remember offhand which section the power line is in?
29.
I would recommend that you take a look at your cover sheet. If you take a look at your cover sheet, we've provided some information regarding the power lines, the utility undergrounding with some diagram as well. And then it is section 29.
29.
So.
Thank you very much. All right. We invite our guests from Rocky Mountain Power up. Welcome to beautiful Laramie.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, Council. I'm Greg Hansen. I'm a Operations Manager for Rocky Mountain Power out of Casper office. I'm also covering the Laramie area in the interim. We primarily support the language that we've been working together with the city on amendments thereof. So we really just wanted to be here tonight for any questions, more so from a technical perspective that you folks may have. Otherwise, I really don't have a whole lot to add.
Questions for Rocky Mountain Power while they're here? Councilor Hanson.
Thank you. My understanding is that we are not talking about these high voltage lines at all, that are they actually yours? I don't even know. And you know, there's of course the one by the rec center that there was a big discussion whether it could be put underground, and it was simply decided it was impossible. So we have this pole standing there in the middle with guy wires holding it up, etc., etc. That's not what we're talking about, right?
Well, I believe the reworded language does address those as well, just to add a level of clarity to what's reasonable and economically viable to be a candidate for burial and those sorts of things. So I believe that language does support, at least covers those topics.
Mm-hmm. And excludes those.
Well, the language does include discussion on they're technically a transmission line, high voltage lines, and I believe that, correct me if I'm wrong, that those are not going to be forced for burial as a part of development.
Yeah.
Just because of the economic feasibility.
Thank you.
Councilor Schoen.
Just a question about our tech park with the WAPA, lines that we have up there. Is that practical, and is it something that you would recommend the city to do? And if so, what would be the approximate cost to bury WAPA lines?
First of all, let me start off with the ultra high voltage lines that transmit power across the state and across the country are very, very expensive assets. It's not infeasible to bury those. However, it is extremely cost prohibitive. I couldn't possibly throw some dollar figures off the top of my head at you for, again, it would depend on the length and on that particular route, and there's a lot of variables there involved to give you something somewhat accurate. But the high voltage transmission lines are extremely costly to underground, and it creates some other engineering issues as well. I'm not really able to speak to the WAPA lines because obviously those are owned by Western Area Power Administration versus Rocky Mountain Power, but we do have some high voltage transmission lines in the area also, and they're extremely cost prohibitive to bury.
Vice Mayor.
So educate me a little bit on power lines. So I think I heard you say that there are really powerful power lines that are major, like the lines at the WAPA substation, right? And then they go down in voltage, right? So would that be the highest, and then would it go like to 3-phase and then down to 2-phase, or tell me the range?
Okay, well, let me try and please stop me if I start getting too meticulous here, but the ultra high voltage transmission lines, for example, the WAPA line that's in discussion here, originates over in Cheyenne, and it brings the power to the Laramie area. Those are typically 230,000 volts, so it's a tremendous amount of energy.
Big deal.
Anytime a transmission line comes across like that, it has to have a point of termination, which we call a substation, which is the little fenced area with all the ugly stuff inside there. The substation does nothing more than to step the voltage down to a more reasonable, usable level that we distribute through town. That's why we call those distribution lines. So those are at a lower voltage. And then there's the terminology that you touched on. There's three-phase, two-phase, and even single-phase lines that are all distribution lines. They're 13,000 volts, so it's a substantially lower voltage that we're talking about here. And those are the lines that you see around town.
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
So, what will be coming out of the WAPA substation will either be 3, 2, or single phase?
Of the distribution lines, just for clarity, the distribution lines, that is correct.
Okay.
Now, there's a possibility there could be another transmission line coming out and going to another substation, so kind of an in and an out, if you will.
So, but that would be of the 230,000 volt capacity?
Correct.
Big,
Big.
big, okay.
So the transmission level voltage is what we were discussing here as being very, very costly to underground.
Okay.
The distribution level stuff is not as bad. And in fact, we have overhead and underground distribution lines here in the area already.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for Rocky Mountain Power? So I have one for you as a company.
Absolutely.
Councilor Hanson, sorry, go ahead.
You said you have both. Does that imply that what is above ground in older neighborhoods will stay above ground? Or are you envisioning putting all that underground? I have one in the back of my alley, you know, and then my house line comes off that. That's been above ground for a century or thereabouts.
Sure.
As long as we have had electricity, I think. Will they stay? Because I can imagine that's quite expensive to put these underground.
Absolutely.
As it is, I can see that in a new development where you're starting from scratch, you probably want to put them underground. Is that the way we're operating?
I believe you're hit the nail right on the proverbial head.
Okay.
The existing facilities as they are today, we operate and maintain those and keep those in top operational condition while they remain overhead.
Okay.
Because again, the cost of that is extremely expensive to,
yeah.
once you have existing facilities, it's quite costly to go back and underground those.
Thank you.
And we as ratepayers, all of us in this room are ratepayers, have a vested interest in keeping operational costs low because we all pay for that. So again, there's an offset there, but all of the new facilities that we would be proposing for subdivisions and those sorts of things would be underground.
Thank you. Thank you.
My question relates to, I guess I have two questions. The first is, obviously this conversation kind of has two separate areas. One is, people don't necessarily maybe like to look at power lines, kind of that community look for, and that's why some people want them undergrounded. But I'm also curious about the conversation around safety and the safety conversation, and it seems to be pretty split. So can you kind of extrapolate a little bit on safety incidences with underground lines versus overhead lines, and also outage incidences with underground lines versus overhead lines?
Absolutely, that's a great question. From a safety perspective, we're bound by the National Electric Safety Code, and that's a universal code for the United States. All of our construction standards meet or exceed those requirements. So from an overhead perspective, there's a reason the poles are tall to get that hazard up away from common reach, unless, ladders and those other sorts of things where people have in the past gotten involved and had some contact issues. Not very common. From an underground facility perspective, kind of the same thing, although they're a lot easier to get to with a shovel. So we have conflicts on both sides of that argument. Which is safer? I honestly can't really say. In a urban setting, I would say the overhead facilities are actually have a little better safety record, and it's just because they aren't dug into quite as frequently.
And how about outages and how that affects? So what I'm thinking of as a Laramie resident is the wind and the snow and the ice, and the flickering lights we've had during the wind events and the times we've had power lines come down because of that. You wouldn't necessarily have that with underground lines.
Well, you're correct. From a reliability perspective, the overhead facilities, they're exposed to the elements. And as lovely as the Wyoming weather can be sometimes, those facilities take a pounding. So we're pretty aggressive about getting maintenance done on that, but sometimes the unforeseeable things still happen. We still have outages, although we strive to eliminate or minimize those for sure. Those are more problematic with an overhead facility versus an underground. Lightning strikes, all those reasons are obviously a factor. As far as restoration times go, overhead facilities are a little faster to restore power just because you can see them.
Yeah.
The underground stuff, it's very tricky to diagnose, troubleshoot, and figure those issues. We have some special equipment that does that, but it's just a little more timely.
And can you clarify for me real quick, when you underground lines, does it go in conduit that protects it from potentially the shovel, or?
It does.
Right?
Yep,
Okay.
it does. However, it's just a plastic PVC conduit.
So if
It is back to that electrical standard stuff, but it's not impermeable to the big old track hose that get a hold of them. So the incidental shovel contact, yeah, they're
That's
protected
all right.
from that.
Okay. But still call before you dig.
Absolutely. Please call before you dig.
Thank you, Mayor. I had firsthand knowledge of this situation where I currently live. I was not there at the time, but about 12, 13 years ago when Bob was the regional manager. And he was petitioned by this resident because of health concerns. This resident did a bunch of background information and thought that the overhead power lines were a problem with health. And she was an elderly lady, and she petitioned, and finally, after a number of years, got the power lines underground up to where my property is now. So I was just wondering how that particular process works, because it took a long time for her to get the power underground, and then it was to a certain point, and then it's above.
So I think let me try to hit that with two different points, if I may. The first would be the health concerns. There's been numerous studies, and I'm slipping my engineer hat on for just a second, so bear with me. There's been numerous studies of EMF, magnetic fields around the high voltage transmission lines or the distribution lines. There's a lot of people who can buy a simple Gauss meter and even walk around the neighborhoods and test those and measure different things. Basically, in a nutshell or in summary, there has really been inconclusive evidence that it's really caused health issues. Arguments on both sides. I don't want to get involved in any of that, but it's a luxury that we all enjoy. However, there are some side effects, and the magnetic fields are just happen to be one of those. We've got some interesting stuff on our website if you really want to dive into that. I've got a lot more information, but just don't want to bore you with it today. But as far as undergrounding the existing overhead lines, again, it's a very expensive proposition. There have been, again, I'm from the city of Casper, and they do a little bit of undergrounding every year as some improvement projects, beautification projects. But basically how that works is the city or the entity that's wanting those undergrounded basically comes out, we meet, we take a look at the scope of the project, start working on some designs and figuring out the costs of those sorts of things and how we all put that together. And basically the funding comes from the customer or the city, or depending on who's driving that undergrounding option, as long as, as much money as is promoted towards the project is basically how far it can go. We have to be careful in doing so. We've got to maintain a system integrity, if you will. If you underground short pieces underground overhead, you start getting your system fragmented from a protection perspective. So there's some engineering concepts that also come into play there with those concepts.
Any other questions for Rocky Mountain Power, Councilor Hanson?
Thank you, Your Honor. We had a citizen point out today already, and it also writing us a letter, that when you go underground, some of the stuff doesn't have to be underground by rule or regulation. Other stuff should be underground. And there was the suggestion and discussion to build for the future, and I've seen it in other countries, where you put down sort of wider elements with different tubes in them and have pre-strung whatever wire in it, and if you need to add something, you just connect it on one end and pull it through, etc., etc. Is this what you're thinking of if you're going to underground wiring in the future, so that that possibility exists for other venues to join in the underground system? Or are you just, you mentioned before, just a single plastic covering? So where are we on this?
Well, I think that's a really good segue into some other conversation.
Yeah.
We value our partnership with the city very much so, and I think it's highly important for us to be at the planning stages along with the city to develop what I'll call a master plan. It's only as good as anybody's crystal ball, but we try to forecast the future needs and what the city looks like when it grows.
Yeah.
And how big or how many of those conduits should we be installing before the streets are paved or all that happens. So there's a lot of thought that goes into that. Some of it's guesswork. Sometimes we hit, sometimes we miss. But when in doubt, we always oversize the size of the conduits. We frequently put in a 6-inch duct, which we can change the wire size from smaller to quite a bit larger within that existing duct. So we do try to plan a lot for the future. Again, back to the National Electric Safety Code issue, there is some separation requirements even underground from us and other utilities. So we don't do any infrastructure planning for others, if you will, but primarily the electrical facilities are very well thought out, or at least the attempt is there to plan for the future.
So just if I may follow up, would it be more cost effective if you put down conduit underground to put on sort of slabs with different holes in them, different tubes in them? Because you can't put, I guess, all of the things together in the same tube. That's my understanding. A, it's not permissible. Secondly, it probably wouldn't work. So would that be, and I don't know who would do this. Would this be the city's responsibility, or would this be the power company's responsibility? How does this work? I have no idea.
Well, typically, let's just pick on a brand new development for instance. The developer comes in and they pretty much pay for the facilities to be installed as part of the infrastructure for the subdivision.
Yeah.
So all the conduits and the vaults, those are all designed by our folks, but they're actually installed by the developer, and they're funded by the developer for that matter too. So that would probably fall back onto those folks.
Is that one single tube, or are those?
The answer is that one, it depends.
Depends.
Because we have to, again, for these tricky code issues that we have to comply by, the high voltage cables, the 13,000 volt cables, have to be in a different pipe than the household voltage cables, and those are like 120 volts like you find in the outlet.
Yeah.
So those have to be separate pipes, again, just from those code issues, so you don't get any, if you have a cable failure, you don't have any cross issues. You don't want 13,000 volts going to your TV set.
So what you tell me is it probably would be good to have one with 5 or 6 pipes so that you could add stuff in the future.
You certainly could. The alternative to that, and I think that's what a lot of people do because nobody really has a good crystal ball to install a lot of conduits, is that we utilize a directional bore contractor. So when the facilities are all in place, the street's paved, everything's there, and oh geez, we missed one, we need an extra conduit here. We'll hire a contractor that can drill that horizontally without disruption to the surface, just a hole on both ends. We use that quite a bit.
Yeah.
So that's been our backup plan, if you will. However, it doesn't allow you to group those very closely together because they've got to have room for that device to work. So in heavy density areas, the underground infrastructure gets pretty convoluted and pretty widespread very fast. And I see that being an issue going forward.
Thank you, yours.
Vice Mayor?
So first of all, I just want to say thank you for coming over the hill and talking to us tonight. My question, and I think I heard you say, a potential master plan might be a good move for our community to do, so that when we have development, or especially that infill type development, that we create a plan so that we can say to developer X, you know, we've done the work already, and now this is a place where they're going to go underground. Or developer Y comes in based on where they're developing. If this is the spot where we're going to be okay with it overhead because of all the other surrounding issues. And so, and that's something that you guys do not do, that we would have to hire out for a citywide type master plan on going with our with our wires?
Well, let me jump on that a little bit. We do master planning. It all depends on how many players are involved, and to what extent. If we know you guys are going to be working on a master plan, we'd sure like to jump in and kind of ride along with you and work collaboratively on something like that. We do it in quite a few communities across our service territory. But we do master planning on our own behalf too, just trying to guess, all right, what areas of town are growing faster, and kind of based on the density and the types of loads that are existing, what do we try to forecast for the future, and how are we going to serve those people?
Right.
So we do quite a bit of that already.
So I think from a city perspective, I think that would be potentially a really good idea, because then we wouldn't have developers, the X, Y, and Z developer going, I don't want to put them underground because it's going to cost me more money. And, then we would have a document that would allow us to make decisions kind of holistically for the entire community. And I think that might be something we want to consider thinking about.
And I support that. Let me talk about the elephant in the room. And you're talking about existing overhead and underground facilities. But as the town grows, the sources of energy that we're going to need increase. So right now out north of town, we have a substation that kind of sits out there on the hill, and it's not most necessarily the prettiest thing in the world, but we don't have a lot of those sporadically around the valley yet. But as the town grows, those power requirements, that little substation can only produce so much energy. So we have to think about siting other substations, again, as the master plan expands. And if we kind of have a rough idea, well, somewhere over on the northeast part of town, we're going to need one of these. Working together again, we can kind of expect what that would look like in 20, 30 years and that sort of thing. So a collaboration on a master plan is a wonderful thing.
Thank you.
And it really helps us all kind of plan, because we all need to look at our infrastructure. It's the same thing for you guys in the water and the sewer lines.
Right, exactly. Thank you.
Any other questions for Rocky Mountain Power before we let them travel back to Casper? Well, thank you very, very much for coming tonight. We really appreciate the education and the information.
Happy to. Thank you very much, and again, we certainly appreciate our relationship with the city and continue to.
Some of us come over the hill, others are over the hill. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. So with that, I know we have some members from LCBA, and I've spoken with them, and they're okay talking at the next meeting about power lines, and given the time of the hour, I hope that is okay with council. So I would look for a motion to postpone this.
So moved.
We have a second. Do we want to postpone it till next Tuesday?
Next Tuesday.
February
13th?
Is it
February 13th, postponement.
Second.
Second by Councilor Schuster. City Clerk, roll call on the postponement, please. I'm sorry, is there any discussion on it? Okay, roll call on the postponement, please.
Gabriel.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
McKinney.
Yes.
Palikas, absent. Shumway.
Yes.
Schuster.
Yes.
Stoner.
Yes.
Pierce?
Yes.
Somerville?
Yes.
That's 8 yeses, 0 noes, and 1 absent, Your Honor.
Thank you. That motion is postponed until next, or that
Your
item is
Honor?
postponed until next Tuesday.
Your Honor, may I suggest that, for example, the gentleman who spoke before, Mr. Glass, contact and talk to the city folks in what needs to be rewritten there or redone
We will,
before it comes back.
okay, fair
Thank you.
enough. All right, so let's move on to item number 13. This is Councilor McKinney.
Move to approve original ordinance number 1979, the first reading, annexing approximately 5.76 acres of property located in unincorporated Albany County, located at 2931 Soldier Springs Road, based on findings of fact, conclusions of law, and set the public hearing and second reading for February 20th, 2019.
Do we have a second? Second by Councilor Schuster. Planner Connor, and before you start, I'm gonna tell you, since it's 8:45, you can give us the abridged version of this tonight. I apologize, because this one will have, and the item following will have 3 readings. So I think we'll have plenty of time to go through this on the next reading. So
Gladly.
the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Abridged version, up before you is a property located on the southern edge of town, again, just shy of 6 acres. It is contiguous to the current city boundary. Some main points to be aware of, it is along Soldier Springs Road. Soldier Springs Road, however, will not become a portion of the city, nor will it be city right-of-way. It will be continued to be maintained by the county. That is owned by Union Pacific Railroad, so it is staying the way it is. It will not become maintenance for the city to obtain, to snow plow, to do anything like that. This particular project does have $600,000 roughly of private investment for infrastructure, along with it for sewer and water to reach the property. So there is significant amount of private infrastructure investment reaching the property. Actually, I believe it's probably done by now, ready to be turned on as soon as it is annexed. Overall, this property will be looking at, once annexed into the city, approximately $10,000 per year in property tax, approximately $52,000 in plant investment fees, one-time fee for turning on those city services, and then roughly about $3,000 in city services annually as well. So that is the very, very short of it. The applicant is still here. He did have a short presentation just about the company that you may be interested in seeing. That will be up to him if he believes he can cut it down to as short as you would like. But I'm happy to answer any questions, as well as the applicant is here.
Are there any questions for Mr. Connor on this? Councilor Hanson.
Just one quick question. I saw there is a person that did the filing. Is that the owner, or is that person representing the owner?
Mayor and Councilor Hanson, that is just the representative. I believe he's the site, the manager of this site. It is a worldwide corporation that does own it. I believe he'll have to tell you exactly his title, but.
Because usually with annexations, we want to know that the owner is in agreement to this, and that's why I'm asking that question.
Mayor and Councilor Hanson, that's correct. The owner is agreeing with it. They need to sign the application before we'll take it in.
Thank you, that's all.
Thank you. Any other questions for city staff? Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Connor. Good job. Good approach. So invite the owner's rep up here. Welcome to council, and thank you for your patience
Yeah,
this
thank
evening.
you. So I do have a short presentation. I don't know if you want to, I can go through it really quick.
It's up to you, or we're happy to give you time at the second reading too to go through it in a little bit more detail if you'd like. I hate to rush
I'm
you
here
through
to
stuff,
answer
so.
any questions you guys have, so.
Is that amenable to council if he does it on second reading for us? Is that all right?
Does that refer to the material we got
Can you just
earlier?
Could you just, I think some of it is in there, Councilor
Okay,
Hanson, but
all right.
could you just briefly tell us about the company, and then if you can do the presentation and give us a little bit more detail in second reading, that would be wonderful.
So, so the owner company is actually Merck, KGaA. It's the German Merck. They've been in business they're actually going to celebrate their 350th year anniversary this year. So our company was bought about 7 years ago by another company that got purchased by Merck in the last 3 years. And that's all on that presentation. I can go through real quick. But we've been in the community for 30 years and plan to at least 30 more.
That's wonderful. I look forward to hearing more information about the company. Does anybody have any questions for him this evening on this?
Does he know what the word Merc means? It means hark.
I did not know that.
Oh,
I just
yeah.
know it's, I know it's the founding father of our company.
Yeah. Hark the Angel or something like that.
All right. Well, if there's no other questions, thank you very much. And we'll give you some time on second reading. Put you closer to the front of the agenda.
No problem. Thank you.
Is there any public comment on this item here? Seeing none, any discussion by council here on first reading? All right, City Clerk, roll call.
McKinney,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Gabriel,
Yes.
Stoner,
Yes.
Schuster,
Yes.
Shumway,
Yes.
Halikis absent, Pierce,
Yes.
Somerville.
Yes.
That's 8 yeses, 0 noes, 1 absent, Your Honor.
Thank you, that motion carries. Item number 14, Mr. Connor.
Mr. McKinney, can I
Oh, I
introduce it?
apologize, Mr. McKinney. Wow, I'm really off
I was
tonight.
wondering, I was like, well, I guess I don't have to.
Yeah, just go for it.
Last truck.
Okay, I move to approve the original ordinance number 1980 on the first reading to rezone the property at 2931 Silver Springs Road from county commercial to C2 general commercial based on findings of fact and conclusions of law. Set the public hearing and the second reading for February 20th, 2018.
Second.
Second by Counselor Stoner. Now, Mr. Connor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So this is part 2 of the annexation that was just moved forward. City staff is recommending zoning for the C2, the general commercial zoning district. This is in line with the future land use plan, and staff is designating what the company does as a medical research company in the Laramie Municipal Code, which is a conditional use within the C2 zoning district. Because the site is pre-existing and won't be changing upon annexation, we're not requiring a conditional use with this. However, in the future, if they were to expand, then we would get a conditional use at that time. Again, trying to keep it brief, that is most of what you need to know.
Thank you. And we'll get more information on second reading. Is there any questions for city staff on the rezoning right now for this? Counselor Hanson.
Just one question, I guess, for staff. Is auto urban commercial less or more restrictive than what they want, the C2?
Mayor and Councilor Hanson, we're talking apples and oranges here. Auto urban commercial is a future land use designation which has a variety of different applicable zoning districts within it. C2 is one of those applicable zoning districts. So basically, because it is designated auto urban commercial, it allows us to recommend the C2 zoning for it.
So would it be an advantage for them to keep it auto urban? Is that more general? I didn't quite follow this.
Mayor and Councilor Hanson, it will be remaining auto urban commercial. Basically, that allows us to have the zoning district. The zoning district is what gives us the ability to regulate and put, requirements upon it for what can be put there and what uses can be there. However, the auto urban commercial designation is slated for this type of situation where we know we want to grow in that direction, and because of the auto urban commercial, we know what type of zoning districts we'd like to put there. So it won't be changing. The auto urban commercial will remain the future land use, while the C2 will be established as the zoning district.
For this particular?
Correct.
Okay.
Any
Thank
other-
you, Your Honor.
Any other questions for city staff? All right, thank you. Is the applicant, do you have any other comments to add for the zoning change? Any comments from the public on the zoning change? All right, any discussion by council on the zoning change tonight? City Clerk, roll call, please.
McKinney,
Yes.
Shumway,
Yes.
Schuster.
Yes.
Stoner,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Gabriel.
Yes.
Polikis absent. Pierce.
Yes.
Somerville.
Yes.
That's 8 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 absent, Your Honor.
Thank you, that motion carries. Moving on to item number 11A, Counselor Hanson.
Yeah, I have to find it.
Oh, quickly.
Hang on. It used to be
I have a minute and 20 seconds.
8, what did you do?
8G. It was 8G.
G, okay. I move that council approve resolution 2018-10, authorizing the appointment of a local attorney, Jody Shea, as a magistrate for the city of Laramie Municipal Court, and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign.
Second.
Second by the Vice Mayor. We didn't ask Director Brown to stay for this one. City Attorney, do you want to take it? Okay. I'm not sure what information council needs, but go for it.
Judge Playton, in her contract, which you approved, has an obligation to recommend to City Council competent magistrates to fill in when she is unable to sit on the bench. She has done so. She has recommended Jody Shea as an additional magistrate. Her resume is attached to this resolution. The city only has 2 other magistrates now, Rob Sanford and Devin O'Connell. Either because of conflicts or scheduling, either conflicts with a case or scheduling conflicts, the city generally needs 3 magistrates to be able to call so that the bench can stay staffed. Any questions?
Questions, Counselor Hanson.
Your Honor, I asked to pull it off for a very simple reason. I could not get an answer earlier whether we've always had 3 magistrates, whether this is something new. It seems we always had 3, or at least for some time. And I asked that question because it's, of course, not totally without expense, this item. And so I wanted to know how this had worked in the past, and that was my reason. I think there's also somebody in the public who would like to speak to this.
Any other questions for staff? Thank you. Do you have any comments from the public on this item? Please come forward.
I'm not disputing the number of magistrates. What concerns me is the procedure. Take, for example, if an individual wants to be on the Traffic Commission. It's advertised. Any interested party, they send in a resume, comes before the council. There could be a committee. Resumes are looked at. The decision is made as to who would be the best candidate. However, in this particular case, there's no advertising. You have one individual, one resume. You have nothing to compare it to. And I believe the council should be looking at several resumes, and you should be from interested parties, and you should be asking questions like, have you ever had a jury trial? I don't believe Jody Shea has ever had a jury trial. What experience have you had in criminal law? Real estate planning doesn't qualify as criminal law. When you look at the majority of the cases faced in municipal court, it's criminal. They're not talking about real estate matters. Then I think it's also interesting, if you go ahead with Jody Shea tonight, what you have is, I believe, a royal conflict of interest. Notice Devin O'Connell, she works for the same firm Jody Shea works for. It's the same firm Mr. Southard worked for. If that firm has to recuse themselves for some conflict, you just eliminated 2 of your magistrates. And I know that historically, the city has always been over backwards for that particular firm. I recall the interview for city attorney, and all the applicants, all the interested parties, all the law firms were here. It was it was an advertised interview, and there was some kind of hanky-panky going on, and it was decided that we weren't going to have an interview. We're just going to move directly and make a motion to have one particular law firm in. And that was Mr. Southard's law firm. You essentially denied all the other law firms an interview. I think it's getting very apparent that there's a conflict with the city in the preferential treatment. And by the way, that alleged interview was 9 minutes. And there were a lot of dissatisfied law firms that left and thought it was really very rude of the council to do that. So essentially, you've got city attorney, you've got 2 magistrates, and they all have ties to the same law firm. The budget for this magistrate is $30,000. That's $30,000 of taxpayers' money. And the council has a responsibility to utilize that budget judiciously. And the fact that this item was originally on the consent agenda, I think illustrates how incompetent this council is.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments on this item?
Well, it might be noted,
Sir, if you could introduce yourself for the record, please.
I'm Andrew Joel G. Fonte. And it might be noted that none of these magistrates are worth a darn that I've seen. None of them stand up for justice. None of them have that in their vocabulary. They're all very oppressive. They do not stand up for, they do not protect the poor. They do not protect the rights of the individual through the words of A.V. Dicey, who was anti-women, anti-home rule of the Irish back in the 17th century. So he was anti-Constitution of the America too. And he, because of the words of this A.V. Dicey, the rule of law takes our sovereignty. So please, find a judge, find somebody, and you've got them right here. You're going to beg me. It's going to be my last job of this life, to sit on that magistrate bench right there and actually bring justice back into this courtroom. I'm going to bring truth back into these here halls of people who care about the poor and not willing to sit there and marginalize based upon the well-being of their bank account, but on the well-being of their character, of what they do and how they do it. And I have borne witness to Tony the Liar Lopez. Done. Okay? And what do we have? Donnell going to hell. These people have no sense of what's in these words of the Constitution. But yet you guys are going to let them rule over somebody? I'll tell you this. You get somebody who's not participating in the democracy of what they produce when they say those words. They're sitting there using words that are defeating the blood sacrifice of all previous vets in every single war that we've had, because they throw out our sovereignty when they use those words, rule of law. Not that there's not something to that rule of law, there's something there yet I have not tapped. But however, that is the smoking gun of why we have no common sense anymore in our magistrate, in our jurisdiction of law. There is no common sense, there is no justice, there is no truth, there is no protection of people, whatever they're up to, whatever they're doing. There is no protection of these people. It's a lying, manipulative tongue that is represented and that wins on most occasions, because this is what a judge told me last week, and this is, quote, "This may not be the truth. This may not be what actually happened, but because of the rule of law, I have to award this." And then the lady that sat there in that stand used the same words, and I said that the rule of law, her rule of law, that this rule of law of A.V. Dicey is a farce. Because in fact, this rule of law that they are using is breaking our people down and hurting our community, hurting the poor, hurting the Mexicans, and in fact, hurting me. I stood up and I said, you're not going to get your payday off of this street. I live on one of the poorest streets. And I said, stop going down the street and doing that. So what did James Pratchell do? He jumped on my back. As I had the Constitution in my hands, he jumped on my back. And what did O'Malley do? Smiled. And then what did this lady here, who were asking for the immediate removal, the recall, with Bob on our coffee meeting at 9 o'clock Thursday at Coal Creek, this is what we're doing. We are recalling this woman who is hurting our community, hurting the poor, hurting the weak, hurting the sexual orientation people, hurting the ones who are God-fearing and believe in some higher calling that matters more than just money. However, because this is a racketeer judge system in here, Laramie, and do not build your community through respect, integrity, teamwork, and stewardship, and you are all guilty of this, according to what we see as a people, the stories on the street, the people who talk, the stories that are out there. This is what you guys bring. This is the best you guys can do. Let me remind you then, the masters are out here, and the servants are right here.
Mr. Fontaine, you'd be surprised how well that microphone works. We can certainly hear you.
The reason you can hear me is because I'm Italian. So please,
No,
no racism there. I'm Italian, that's why I'm loud.
So,
I guarantee you
but
that.
I have to also ask you to keep your comments contained to the item on the floor, which is the appointment of Jody Shea as the magistrate.
It's the appointment of any of your magistrates, ma'am. No matter which one has sat on that bench. This lady, Playton, is the closest to an actual judge that has sat on that stand. So, who is this lady? I have no idea who the hierarchy that this man here is so boldly pointing out. Because I would like to know that hierarchy of how it's handed down. But I'll tell you what, you're going to be begging Andrew Joel G. Fonte for that seat. You're going to be asking me one day. I'm studying the law right now. We're going to be lawyers. And we're going to come in here one day and we're going to set you all straight. And we're going to remind you of the Constitution. And we're going to remind you what it's like to have a real man that stands up for truth and value and justice and building a community through respect, integrity. What is integrity? Do you even know what that means as a council? I don't know. I don't know you guys. I don't know any of you very well. But the point is that I know your fruits very well. I know your fruits very well. And I ain't happy with it because it affects my neighbors, it affects the poor, and it's hurting people left and right. And so that's your responsibility. And so you find somebody to sit there who has honor, who is honorific, who cares about the Constitution, who cares about the blood sacrifice for our sovereignty, not some rule of law sovereignty.
Mr. Fontaine, I apologize. I know you've been very patient all night, but we have a 5-minute
I'm not
limit
even speaking on the reason I'm here. I'm just taking opportunity. It's a nomocracy. When somebody, a judge, a lawyer, or anybody speaks on that basis.
Mr. Fontaine, we have a 5-minute limit on public comment.
You didn't say nothing to any other 5-minute people.
I did at the
okay?
beginning of the meeting to remind
and
everybody
I
here.
have 2.3 minutes on the clock.
You do not. You actually have been up here for 7 minutes right now.
Well, that's
so I
not,
have to enforce it uniformly.
That's
All
fine, but I didn't hear you say that to
your
anybody else.
comments.
But the point is, there's a whole lot more where that came from. And you're darn right there's going to be people that are going to hold accountable one day every one of the people who violate the sovereignty of man in this here country. And when that happens, whose name, what side of yours is your name going to be on? What side are you going to be on when that time comes? Because I guarantee you, I know where my name is, and that's American. And I ask you all, and I'm German, and I'm Italian, and I'm all of that too. Because out of many comes one, and that's our America. And we better stand up for it, or these people, this nomocracy, is taking over our democracy. And it's happening in that seat all over the nation. It's happening in that seat because what is the one bureau of government that rubs shoulders with the public? Right there. And that's why the weak spot happens with when judges do not stand up for truth and they manipulate through lying manipulators and prosecutors
Mr. Fontaine,
that don't care.
I have to ask you to stop. I apologize, but we have
Don't
to
need
keep
to
on track,
apologize.
and you're over time. There are a lot of ways to communicate with the council. I would certainly encourage you to email, and
I
contact
am old
information is
school,
available.
ma'am. I speak. So the point is if you guys care, and there is some sort of thing you have with Bob here to get another person on that stand, make sure they are honorific and not some lying, manipulated deceiver, which is what you've put on there before.
Thank you very much. Are there any other public comments on this item? Go back to council, any discussion on this item? City clerk, can you do roll call, please?
Gabriel.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
McKinney.
No.
Polikis absent. Shumway.
Yes.
Schuster.
Yes.
Stoner.
Yes.
Pierce.
Yes.
Somerville.
Yes.
That's 7 yeses, 1 no, and 1 absent, Your Honor.
Thank you, that motion carries. So at this point in time, it is 9:15. It was my intention to get through the airport as well as the ACRB, because ACRB is time sensitive. It would need a motion to suspend the rules to complete the rest of the agenda, which I hope we can do in less than 15 minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Councilor Hanson, second by the Vice Mayor. City.
Have a
Councilor
discussion.
Schuster, please.
Are we trying to just get 2 more in there, 11A and 11B, or what are we doing?
Well, I think that.
11A was just done, wasn't it?
Right, 11A is done. My recommendation would be to do 11B and 12, and then we need to do a motion to postpone 15, and that would complete the agenda. So we can just do if we can do those really quick, then we should be done.
So who's up for, do we have to vote? Is that
Yeah, we do.
2/3?
Yep. City Clerk, can you do roll call, please?
Gabriel.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
McKinney.
Yes.
Polikis absent. Shumway.
Yes.
Schuster.
Yes.
Stoner.
Yes.
Pierce.
Yes.
Somerville.
Yes.
That's 8 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 absent.
Thank you. Let's move to item number 11B, and then I've written over so much stuff. Who was going to take the airport?
I am.
Councilor Shumway, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move to approve resolution number 2018-17, authorizing $11,666 cost share with the Laramie Regional Airport to aid in the cost of upgrading internet service to the professional air park and research center, Cabo Aviation, the terminal and administrative buildings, and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by the Vice Mayor.
And amend the budget.
Mr. Skinner?
Your Honor.
Yes.
Remember, the motion on that one was, you were also going to add and amend the budget?
Oh, yes. Would the motion maker add and to amend the budget?
And to amend the budget
Does the second agree?
for the
Awesome.
11,666.
Second agrees. Okay, thank you. Mr. Skinner,
Good evening.
give us the very brief
Yes.
explanation. Thank you.
Yes, thanks for hearing our request. We, since our fiscal year began, same fiscal year as you guys, we've had the opportunity to improve our infrastructure in our business park along with the existing airport buildings by providing conduit for future fiber into the airfield. We have obtained 2 cost estimates in this. One cost estimate is about half what the other cost estimate that we have. As you know, with the guard facility that's being constructed right now, just to the east of the airport, as you may or may not know, they have provided conduit to that location. We are hoping to tie into that conduit, and it'll take approximately 6,200 feet of conduit, and that would provide opportunities in our business park along with the existing buildings at the airport. We're asking to cost share this with between the airport, the county commissioners, and the city council.
Questions for Mr. Skinner?
have one.
Vice Mayor?
Has the county commissioners voted on this yet?
You know, I talked to Commissioner Chestnut tonight, and they have not had it on any of their agendas. They have received the same letter that you guys received, but it has not appeared on their commission agendas yet.
Any other questions for Mr. Skinner? Thank you. Oh, Councilor Hanson.
Just a brief observation. Of course, we had the statement that the airport, of course, is already a member, and why are we paying for this extra? I think, if I understand this correctly, this is not only for the airport, but also for the other entities, the professional air park, the research center, which is on this side of the airport towards the city, correct? So isn't that where it is located?
Yeah,
So
if you're
all
familiar
of-
with, as you go down Highway 130, before you turn into the airport, there's a building that's
research
occupied by
center.
SciAps, a research.
Which is operated, not operated, but which.
Well, the
supported
airport
by
does
city.
own that building.
Yeah.
And we lease that space to SciAps, but, you know, they're desiring an internet upgrade.
So it's not only for the airport, it's for several entities. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that, because we had the discussion earlier in Finance Committee. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions for Mr. Skinner? Councilor Shumway?
Well, I'll just say this, because of the hour, I had several questions, several comments, and I'm gonna let those go. I support this, but I don't support it without all the information, and I regret that we don't have time to dig into this and to find out more of the possibilities. So anyway, it's a late hour and we need to move on.
Councilor Schuster?
I'm going to support this. I know that they probably have, another 15 lots in the business park that we would love to see other businesses open up on there, and this is just another checkoff sheet for a business coming to this area that says, oh, good, they have fiber optics there.
That's one of the
So
questions.
I think this I think will be a great addition to help attract more businesses to that business park there. So I will support it just because I hope to bring more businesses in.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Skinner.
Thank you.
Comments from the public? I'm so sorry, Mr. Glass, because of the hour, I have to absolutely restrict you to 5 minutes or less.
I promise that I won't go over 5 minutes. I just wanted to remark to council that my company already has 100 megabits of service pointing toward the airport. And we can increase that to more than a gigabit, and we could do that for less, the whole thing, providing a gigabit for less than $6,000, rather than the $30,000 or $40,000 that's being talked about here for fiber. Now, I know that some people have a prejudice in favor of fiber. In fact, the microwaves technology which we're using right now is actually faster than fiber. I don't want to get in the way of any plans that the airport might have, but I want to point out that really this may not turn out to be a well-advised investment. This conduit would run from the center of the airport only as far as the National Guard, and at that point, the only whatever provider had fiber there would be the only one that would be able to serve them. So they also wouldn't have a choice of providers. This sort of echoes what we were talking about earlier. So while I'm not saying don't pass this if the airport board really wants it, I really think that we should consider the wisdom of doing this sort of a thing without checking to see whether a local provider can do better, because my company would like to go and bid, and I intend to go to the airport board on this. I think that we can do it for a fraction of the $30,000 or $40,000 they're talking about, and I really hope that I can save them the money.
Thank you very much, Mr. West. Thank you. Are there any other public comments on this? Okay. Back to council. Any council discussion on this? City Clerk, roll call.
Hanson.
Yes, I don't know.
McKinney. Gabriel.
Yes.
Polikis absent. Shumway.
Yes.
Schuster.
Yes.
Stoner.
Yes.
Pierce.
No.
Somerville.
Yes.
That's 6 yeses, 2 noes, and 1 absent, Your Honor.
Thank you. That motion carries. All right, moving on to item number
12.
12. And that is Counselor Gabriel.
Thank you, Mayor. This is designating recreational project request priorities. I would move that the council approve Resolution 2018-14, designating recreation project request priorities to the Albany County Recreation Board for funding consideration. Fiscal year 2018, authorize the mayor and clerk to sign.
We have a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Shumway. Director Freezer.
Honorable Mayor Todd Feaser, Director of Parks and Recreation. What you have before you is that prioritized list from the Parks, Tree, and Recreation Advisory Board, and the resolution supporting that prioritized list from the process that we implement to award city-funded projects for the rec mill funding that is administered by the Albany County School District. Just real in short order, the process began in October with 3 legal notices plus contact to past award recipients. We went through the process, collected applications that were due December 15th. The Parks, Tree, and Rec Advisory Board reviewed those over 2 nights. The first night on January 10th was presentations. The second night was a prioritization meeting. I feel like we had good success. And just as a point of notice, that since 2010, this rec mill has provided for a little bit over $3 million in recreational improvements, whether they're city or other recreational providers. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
So before I open it up to questions, can you tell me when this is due to the rec mill board?
Honorable Mayor, it's due March 1st.
Okay, thank you. And what I wanted to say to council is sometimes we've had discussion about reprioritizing these, and because of the time, we only have about 5 minutes left, we can have the meeting. If there's anybody that wants to talk about priorities or moving stuff, I would recommend there would be a motion for postponement until Tuesday. That's all I wanted to say. Is there anybody that has questions for Director Freezer? Councilor Hanson.
I have a procedural question. I'm a non-voting member on that rec mill board. Do I declare a conflict of interest? As I say, I'm a non-voting member.
Does it profit you?
I don't.
I don't know. Maybe it can. I don't know.
Councilor Hanson, I don't believe in past that we've asked you to declare a conflict because of that, but I certainly defer to the city attorney.
Mayor, I need to know if it profits you or not.
Well, he asked that already.
You have no conflict.
No, and especially since I'm a non-voting member, but I wanted to point that out.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for Director Freezer? Okay, thank you. Now I will ask, is there anybody that wants to move this for further discussion? Have any concerns about priorities? Councilor Stoner?
Can I just ask one question
Yeah,
of
please.
Director Feaser, and maybe it'll subdue any discussion? Were there any points that were particularly contentious in your process that you went through with the advisory committee where you had a lot of discussion and then decided to flip some things around, or anything that you want to highlight in particular?
Honorable Mayor, through you to Councilor Stoner. The advisory board throughout the presentations asked for priority funding positions. You know, if you could receive less funding, what would you rather have that done for? One of the one most notably would be the Laramie Bike Net, the schoolyard trail system. They'd originally asked for $43,000. The advisory board chose to only award $21,000, just based on that there was one flow line that they wanted to get done that they could do with that, and that was off of their own recommendation. The other most contentious point was whether you were a public recreational provider or not public recreational provider, as if you were competitive sports that may potentially cut children or keep them from playing due to skill. And that award recipient was cut severely back to where it was just products to assist with the learning of the sport. And I'd say that was probably the two most contentious items.
Does that answer your questions? All right. Thank you. Welcome. Are there any public comments on this item? Is there any discussion or any motions for postponement for further discussion on this item? Councilor Hanson?
It seems the commission, of course, your group already prioritized. I should point out that the financial situation of the board is not dire bad. I don't know how far down they will go as far as the funding is concerned. You've seen the average, but I think we can probably expect them, from what I hear, to go higher than we have been, higher than the average we've been.
Real quick, Honorable Mayor, through you to Councilor Counselor Hanson, the Albany County Rec Mill, one mill brings in roughly about $500,000. In the past 2 years, the Albany County Rec Board's recommendation to the Albany County School District is to fund the entire requested projects with past funding that is overage money with the expected return the next fiscal year. So there is good anticipation that quite possibly all of the projects will be funded. But if you go off the law of averages, I think we figured that we make it through roughly about project number 16, possibly project number 17, if you just go off standard. But the past 2 years, they have funded our entire list.
Thank you. Any other?
And you've done already some reduction there that you would suggest.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other discussion on this?
And Mayor, just as a liaison to the board, they sit through 25 presentations one night, come back the next night and prioritize, so that this board is commendable, sitting through a number of hours of presentations and then vetting out all these different requests. And I think board has done an outstanding job.
Yeah, they do.
Honorable Mayor, to reiterate what Councilor Gabriel had said, is this is probably the one item that my board believes is their number one product to this community. It doesn't just service the city, it services the entire recreational viability of other organizations.
Thank you very much. Any other discussion? Okay with the roll call vote? City Clerk, roll call, please.
Gabriel.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
McKinney.
Yes.
Polikis absent. Shumway.
Yes.
Schuster.
Yes.
Stoner.
Yes.
Pierce.
Yes.
Somerville.
Yes.
That is 8 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 absent, Your Honor.
Thank you. That motion carries. Unfortunately, so does 9:30. 9:30. So we are not going to get the opportunity to postpone item number 15. I will work with the clerk on whether that can come back on the special meeting on Tuesday or if it has to be in 2 weeks. That'll be a fun discussion. So we have, the code of conduct says we have to stop at 9:30.
You can suspend those rules to do this. Yes, you can.
That one they said we could not.
We cannot suspend the rules to move past 9:30. That was the discussion that we've had before.
I thought it was
The
9:30
first
to
one,
10.
the first one's 9:30.
Oh my gosh, the code of conduct.
Your first one is, you all have the code and conduct in front of you. Your Honor, I believe your first one is 9:30, and then it's
Second is
10
10.
o'clock is your second one.
You couldn't start things after.
Just pretend you can't.
Perfect, we're moving on. If there's no complaints, we're gonna move on. Let's put item number 15 on the floor. Counselor Schuster.
You're not gonna like it anyway. I apologize to the staff. They have worked very diligently and hard on this. But with all the changes we have done to this ordinance is no better than the one we already had existing.
Put it on the floor.
Put it on the floor so we can, we're gonna.
I decline to put it on the floor. Find
Fair enough.
somebody
Is there
else.
somebody that would put it on the floor for postponement to Tuesday?
Let me just do it.
Because that's what we told the public.
Go to me.
I can do it.
Vice Mayor, please.
I move to approve the original ordinance number 1977 on third and final reading, amending Title 12 of the Laramie Municipal Code, 12.08.020, snow, ice, and debris. Removal from sidewalks based on finding of fact and conclusions of law, and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the ordinance.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Gabriel.
Okay, I move to, can I
Please.
keep going?
Yep, please.
I move to postpone original ordinance number 1977 to a week from tonight.
Sounds good. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Gabriel. Any discussion on the postponement? All right. Now there is no public. City Clerk, roll call, please, on the postponement.
Gabriel.
Yes.
Hanson.
No.
McKinney.
No.
Polikis absent. Shumway.
Yes.
Schuster.
No.
Stoner.
Yes.
Pierce.
Yes.
Somerville.
Yes.
That's 5 yeses, 3 nos, and 1 absent, Your Honor.
Almost fell. That's it.
All right, that motion is postponed until next Tuesday. If we're just going to finish out, we'll go to item number 17. Is there any public comment on non-agenda items? Seeing no public. Item number 18, consideration of future council work sessions. Does anybody have any requests right now?
I think we talked about it earlier.
Yes, I think that was. All right, Counselor Hanson.
I move that council adjourn to executive session regarding litigation and confidential information according to Wyoming statutes paragraph 16-4-405A, Roman numeral 3, and Roman numeral 9.
Do we have a second? Second. Second by the Vice Mayor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We adjourn.
Isn't it good that I learned how to read?